Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 1 of our story. If you like this what if story and want to see part 2, let me know in the comments below. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Also, check the description for more great content and my playlist. This story was posted by 𝗕𝗏𝗍𝗵𝗍 on Wattpad. Now let's start. Name: 𝗬/and Midoriya. Age: 16. Looks: likes Izuku and friends, being a hero, bargain sales, video games, manga, helping others, his 𝗕𝗏𝗵𝗍, his mom's cooking, seeing Izuku succeed, protecting his friends and family, other heroes, cheap prices, Suyu's frog noises, dislikes, villains and monsters, winning fights in one punch, being bored, anyone hurting or making fun of Izuku, long and boring speeches, 𝗵𝗃𝗄, seeing Izuku and others discouraged or hurt, missing bargain sales, forgetting important things, Minata's antics, being annoyed. 𝗬/and was perceptive enough to notice when a girl was flirting with him, though he often felt confused, unaware of how many girls had a crush on him. The Midoriya household was bustling with excitement as Izuku called out for 𝗬/and. Inko Midoriya, having just finished cleaning the dinner plates, felt her youngest son tugging at her as he rushed to find his older brother. Izuku was eager for computer time, urging 𝗬/and to hurry. 𝗬/and, just finishing up in the bathroom, joined his brother at the computer, where they were about to watch a video. Inko commented on how many views the video had received, expressing her disbelief at how much the boys enjoyed it, finding it rather scary. 𝗬/and remarked that it was a step toward showing that Izuku could be a hero. As they watched, the video showcased a disaster from years ago, where the #1 hero, All Might, emerged from the rubble, carrying unconscious civilians. The brothers were captivated as All Might reassured the citizens, and Izuku, filled with excitement, raised his toy of All Might, declaring his aspiration to be a hero just like him. 𝗬/and smiled at his brother's enthusiasm but felt a pang of concern deep inside. He hoped Izuku would achieve his dream, even if he himself lacked a quirk. Later, however, their world shifted dramatically when a doctor delivered devastating news. 𝗬/and could hardly believe it as he shouted in disbelief, desperately seeking answers. The doctor confirmed that Izuku was quirkless. 𝗬/and's heart sank as he watched Izuku's spirit falter, knowing how hard his brother had already struggled with bullying. 𝗬/and's thoughts raced as he grappled with the reality that Izuku, who had always inspired him, was now facing an uphill battle. That day, Izuku sat alone, watching the video of All Might again, tears in his eyes. He pointed out how All Might always smiled, no matter the circumstances, and questioned if he could also be a hero. Inko, moved by her son's words, hugged him tightly, tears streaming down her face. 𝗬/and stood frozen, wishing for a different outcome, wishing his mother had given Izuku hope instead of doubt. Feeling overwhelmed, 𝗬/and retreated to his room, tears flowing as he lay on his bed, mourning the weight of the day. 8 years later, the park was empty, providing the perfect setting for the Midoriya brothers to enjoy their new paintball guns, purchased with money saved from chores. 13-year-old 𝗬/and was stealthily searching for Izuku, using binoculars he received for his birthday. Suddenly, a noise startled him and he turned, firing at what he thought was his brother. To his dismay, it was just a fallen stick. Frustrated, he groaned, but his moment of reflection was cut short when a barrage of paintballs hit him in the shoulder. Turning around, he saw Izuku grinning, paintball gun in hand, and they both laughed as they engaged in a playful battle. However, their fun was interrupted when they noticed chaos unfolding nearby, with people running and screaming. Curious and concerned, they turned to see a large shadow looming over them. The crab monster, 𝗵𝗃𝗏, was furious about the blue paint on his chest, demanding to know who was responsible. 𝗬/and instinctively stepped in front of Izuku, trying to protect him. He insisted they were innocent, but 𝗵𝗃𝗏 pointed out the evidence on Izuku's paintball gun. 𝗬/and felt a surge of fear as the monster loomed closer, threatening them. In a tense moment, 𝗵𝗃𝗏 declared that he would spare 𝗬/and since he hadn't done the deed, but his annoyance was palpable. 𝗬/and, feeling a mix of anger and defiance, stood his ground, refusing to back down. If anyone wanted to reach his brother, they would have to go through 𝗬𝗏. He held his fists up, determined to fight. The crab man laughed at the sight and swung his claw, knocking 𝗬𝗏 aside like a fly. 𝗬𝗏 grunted as he rolled on the ground, feeling the impact of the attack. Izuku looked at his brother, fear evident on his face. Izuku was worried about himself, but he quickly returned his attention to the villain, who approached him with a menacing intent. The villain taunted them, claiming that there were no heroes to help and that 𝗬𝗏 was just as weak and pathetic as Izuku. As the villain swung at Izuku, 𝗬𝗏 rushed in and tackled his brother to safety. The villain was taken aback. He did not expect such bravery from someone so young. Most kids would either be unconscious or crying, but this one had acted to protect his sibling despite the danger. The villain grew frustrated, demanding 𝗬𝗏 to stop interfering. 𝗬𝗏 stood firm, declaring that he would not let anyone hurt Izuku. He expressed his determination, stating that both he and Izuku would become the greatest heroes in the world, regardless of what others said. The villain scoffed at their aspirations, mocking them for being quirkless and suggesting it would be a mercy for them to perish before facing the harsh realities of the world. He charged at the boys, intent on finishing what he started. 𝗬𝗏 charged at the large crab man and struck his chest, but it had no effect. The villain swatted him aside again, but 𝗬𝗏 quickly got back up, undeterred. Izuku watched in awe as his brother continued to charge at the villain, despite the injuries he was sustaining. Izuku thought about how 𝗬𝗏 believed in him, even when others said he could never be a hero. This inspired him to stand up, filled with determination to fight for their dream. As Izuku yelled and charged at the villain, his punches and kicks felt like mere air puffs to the crabman. The villain groaned, irritated by Izuku's persistence. He retaliated, sending Izuku tumbling back toward 𝗬𝗏. Both boys struggled to rise, but before anything else could happen, long tendrils of wood wrapped around the villain's arms and legs, surprising him. 𝗕𝗵𝗲 appeared, delivering a powerful punch to the villain's face, followed by 𝗕𝗏𝗄, who helped restrain the crabman. After ensuring the villain was incapacitated, the heroes turned to the two boys, shocked by their condition. One of the heroes asked if they were okay, while the other pointed out the obvious, that they needed medical attention. 𝗬𝗏 fell to his knees, and Izuku rushed to support him. 𝗬𝗏 passed out, exhausted but smiling at the thought of his little brother getting back up after a tough hit. Later, in an unnamed hospital, 𝗬𝗏 opened his eyes to find himself in a hospital room with an 𝗕𝗏 connected to his arm. His mother and Izuku were there, both smiling at him. 𝗕𝗏 hugged him tightly, tears of relief streaming down her face. 𝗬𝗏, struggling to speak, told his mother he couldn't breathe. She quickly released him, stepping back with a smile. Izuku expressed his happiness that 𝗬𝗏 was okay, and 𝗬𝗏 praised his brother for his bravery during the fight. Izuku felt confused and a bit sad, insisting that he hadn't done much to help. 𝗬𝗏 reassured him that getting back up after being hit hard was what mattered. They both shared a dream of becoming great heroes someday. As they spoke, 𝗕𝗵𝗲 and 𝗕𝗏𝗄 entered the room, looking serious. They scolded the boys for their reckless actions, emphasizing the danger they had put themselves in. After the heroes left and 𝗕𝗏 went to get drinks, 𝗬𝗏 noticed Izuku looking down. 𝗬𝗏 asked what was wrong, and Izuku hesitated before expressing his doubts about their dream of becoming heroes. He shared his fears that they would never be heroes, especially after their encounter with the villain. 𝗬𝗏 reacted strongly, refusing to accept that they should give up. He reminded Izuku that he was the reason 𝗬𝗏 wanted to be a hero in the first place. He recalled how Izuku had always held onto his dream, despite being told otherwise. 𝗬𝗏 encouraged his brother, reminding him that they could still work hard to become the first quirkless heroes. They could make history and be just as great as the heroes they admired. Izuku looked down, grappling with his brother's words. He had always kept his dream alive, but the recent events had shaken his confidence. 𝗬𝗏 had a sudden idea. He proposed to Izuku that after he recovered, he would start a rigorous training regimen to become strong. Izuku looked at his brother, noticing the determination in his eyes. 𝗬𝗃 explained that he planned to do 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, and a 10-kilometer run every day. He made a deal. If he ever gave up on his training, Izuku could abandon his dream of becoming a hero. But if he persevered and grew strong, Izuku had to hold on to his dream. Izuku was taken aback by the intensity of the workout but felt inspired. 𝗬𝗃 assured him that he would train hard enough to defeat any monster or villain with a single punch. They both understood that achieving their dreams would require hard work and teamwork. 𝗬𝗃 envisioned a future where they would be heroes together, with Izuku's brains and his own muscle complementing each other. Izuku smiled and agreed to the deal, and they celebrated with a fist bump, ready to face the future together. As their mother returned, 𝗬𝗃 looked at Izuku, imagining him as a great hero by his side. He silently promised to become strong enough that nothing would stand in their way of achieving their dreams. The day after 𝗬𝗃 left the hospital marked the beginning of his journey toward incredible strength, one that would soon change their world. In the streets of Mizudafu, Izuku reflected on a harsh truth. Not everyone was born equal. He and 𝗬𝗃 had learned this lesson early in life. Some children possessed more power than others. 𝗬𝗃 believed that when pursuing an impossible dream, one could either remain the same or strive to become something greater. As Izuku ran through the streets, eager to witness a villain in action, excitement surged within him. He wondered which heroes would arrive to confront the threat. 𝗬𝗃 called out to Izuku to slow down, catching up with him in his school uniform, his expression unchanged despite the excitement around them. Izuku couldn't contain his enthusiasm, especially when it came to heroes. They soon spotted a large villain, whose quirk seemed to allow him to grow in size, causing Izuku to exclaim about the supervillain's imposing presence. 𝗬𝗃 joined him, intrigued but unfazed. A bystander mentioned that the villain had stolen a bag and gotten cornered, which disappointed both brothers. With such a powerful quirk, it was disheartening to see the villain resort to petty theft. As the villain broke an energy pole, 𝗕𝗏𝗄𝗵, the punching hero, swooped in to save the day, preventing anyone from getting hurt. The crowd cheered for 𝗕𝗏𝗄𝗵, and 𝗬𝗃 leaned in to whisper to Izuku, playfully imagining the astonished reactions of onlookers if he showcased his own strength, despite being quirkless. They shared a laugh until they noticed water being manipulated into a rope by Backdraft, the rescue specialist, who instructed everyone to stay back for safety. Izuku was thrilled to see so many pro-heroes on the scene. 𝗬𝗃, noticing his excitement, reminded him to calm down. Despite his seemingly emotionless demeanor, 𝗬𝗃 always knew how to support his brother. As they watched, 𝗕𝗵𝗄𝗃 swung into action, and the crowd erupted with excitement, especially the girls who admired 𝗬𝗃. Izuku noted 𝗕𝗵𝗄𝗃's growing reputation, while 𝗬𝗃 teased him about being a fanboy. As they focused on the unfolding battle, 𝗕𝗵𝗄𝗃 prepared to use his special move. Suddenly, the lady made a dramatic entrance, surprising everyone. Cameras flashed as the crowd turned their attention to her. 𝗬𝗃 frowned at the photographers, disapproving of their behavior. The lady confidently introduced herself, assuring the crowd that they had nothing to fear. Izuku quickly took notes on her quirk, recognizing the importance of gathering information. As the lady returned to her normal size, posing for the cameras while the villain was restrained, 𝗬𝗃 observed her with interest. He found her quirk impressive, especially since it allowed her to grow larger than the villain. When she winked at him, he felt a blush creeping onto his cheeks, while Izuku continued to jot down notes, muttering about her abilities. In that moment, both brothers were filled with hope and determination, ready to pursue their dreams of becoming heroes. But it would be difficult for her to navigate the city without causing a lot of damage. This meant she might prove to be quite useful. A bystander noticed 𝗬𝗃 and teased him about taking notes. 𝗬𝗃 joined his brother, smiling as he put an arm around his shoulder, expressing that their notes would be a big help when they started their own hero careers. He playfully noogied Izuku, who laughed and protested. The bystander realized they were brothers and wished them luck, to which they both expressed their gratitude. 𝗬𝗃 glanced at his watch and panicked at the time, realizing they were going to be late for school. He quickly grabbed Izuku and they dashed off, surprising the bystander. At 𝗓𝗪𝙢 Junior High, 𝗕𝗏 struggled to stay awake in class as the teacher droned on. Boredom consumed him, especially since he had become stronger. He forced himself to maintain good grades to avoid trouble at home, particularly on bargain days. He recalled the new hero, 𝗵𝗃𝗍, and wondered if Izuku could remind him of her name after school. She had winked at him, and it seemed she liked him, a feeling he was still getting used to as many girls had been showing interest in him lately. The teacher announced that as first-year students, it was time to think seriously about their futures. 𝗕/N already knew he wanted to be a hero, alongside Izuku. The teacher then surprised everyone by tossing the aptitude test papers into the air, declaring that they all wanted to go to the hero track. The class cheered, showcasing their quirks, but 𝗕/N remained quiet, not wanting to risk causing any damage in the classroom, especially after a mishap during gym class earlier in the year. He smiled at Izuku, and they shared a fist bump. However, 𝗕/N's attention was drawn to a classmate who was demonstrating his quirk in a rather unsettling way. Bakugo, his least favorite person, interrupted the class with his usual bravado, dismissing his classmates as losers. 𝗕/N felt a surge of anger, remembering how Bakugo had bullied Izuku in the past. The teacher acknowledged Bakugo's impressive test results, and the class began discussing the difficulty of getting into 𝗕𝗏. 𝗕/N wasn't worried, he just needed to figure out how to help Izuku get accepted with him. Bakugo boasted about his chances of getting into 𝗕𝗏, claiming he would become more popular than the greatest heroes. 𝗕/N thought it was ridiculous that Bakugo seemed more concerned about fame than helping others. The teacher then asked if he and Izuku wanted to attend 𝗕𝗏, prompting laughter from their classmates. 𝗕/N felt protective and stood up, cracking the desk with his hands as he demanded silence. He asserted that he wanted to go to 𝗕𝗏 as well and that Izuku had a better chance of becoming a hero than any of them, especially Bakugo. Bakugo confronted 𝗕/N, anger evident on his face, but 𝗕/N stood his ground, insisting that both he and Izuku would become heroes, even as quirkless individuals. The tension escalated as they faced off, but after a moment, Bakugo backed down and returned to his desk. 𝗕/N felt a sense of satisfaction knowing he had stood up for Izuku. Izuku smiled at him, grateful for his support. 𝗕/N nodded back, then returned to his desk as the teacher resumed the lesson. Now, he just had to focus on staying awake until school ended. When the school bell rang, signaling the end of the day, students filed out, making plans for how to spend the rest of their time. 𝗕/N checked his phone and noticed a special sale at a nearby supermarket that piqued his interest. He turned to see Izuku engrossed in a news report on his device. 𝗕/N wondered if the fight from that morning was still the hot topic of the day. Izuku confirmed that it was, mentioning how impressive it was to see a new hero take down a villain on her first day. 𝗕/N recalled the new girl hero and struggled to remember her name, prompting Izuku to remind him it was empty lady. 𝗕/N then expressed his belief that she might have been interested in him, recounting how she had winked at him while posing for the cameras. Izuku seemed surprised by this revelation. After a brief exchange, 𝗕/N excused himself to the bathroom while Izuku decided to jot down some notes. They fist-bumped before parting ways. Unbeknownst to 𝗕/N, Bakugo had been watching from a distance, waiting for the moment 𝗕/N left his brother's side. Bakugo had always found 𝗕/N intimidating, especially after the incident 3 years ago when both he and Izuku had faced a dangerous villain. 𝗕/N had since transformed, becoming much stronger, which left Bakugo feeling unsettled. He pondered whether 𝗕/N's strength was due to his quirk and if Deku shared the same power. Bakugo was determined to make it clear to Deku that he should not even consider applying to 𝗕𝗏. As 𝗕/N washed his hands, he noticed Bakugo passing by with a smug smile, which made him uneasy. Entering the classroom, he found Izuku sitting on the floor, looking dejected. 𝗕/N approached him, sensing something was wrong. Izuku reluctantly revealed that Bakugo had destroyed his notebook and made a cruel comment about his future. 𝗬/𝗵 felt anger rise within him at Bakugo's words and reassured Izuku that he should not take them to heart. They decided to go outside to retrieve the notebook, which they found in a pond, thankfully still intact. However, Izuku remained upset, prompting 𝗬/𝗵 to invite him to join him at the supermarket. Izuku declined, preferring to head home alone, which 𝗬/𝗵 respected, hoping some time to himself would help. After a quick trip to the supermarket, 𝗬/𝗵 was grateful for the allowance his mother had given him. While checking prices, his phone rang, and he recognized the ringtone as a favorite song of both him and Izuku. When he answered, Izuku's panicked voice reached him, indicating something was wrong. 𝗬/𝗵's heart raced as he heard Izuku mention a villain and a bridge near the school before the call abruptly ended with laughter on the other end. Realizing his brother was in danger, 𝗬/𝗵 dropped his basket and sprinted out of the store, determined to find Izuku. He raced through the city, disregarding everything in his path, focused solely on reaching his brother. Remembering the bridge Izuku had mentioned, he quickly changed direction and arrived at the scene. What he saw made him stop in his tracks. A villain was threatening Izuku. Fueled by a surge of protectiveness, 𝗬/𝗵 shouted at the villain, demanding he let his brother go. The villain, startled by 𝗬/𝗵's sudden appearance, considered fleeing but decided to use Izuku as a shield instead. Before the situation could escalate, the sewer lid flew open, and the number 1 hero, All Might, emerged. He assured 𝗬/𝗵 that everything would be fine now that he was there. 𝗬/𝗵 watched in awe as All Might skillfully dodged the villain's attacks and prepared to strike back. With a powerful move, All Might unleashed a mighty attack, sending the villain flying and freeing Izuku. 𝗬/𝗵 quickly caught his brother before he could fall, shaking him gently and urging him to respond. "Just let me know you're okay." His wish was granted as his sibling groaned, and he exhaled in relief. He was ever grateful that his brother was all right. He turned to face All Might, who was walking up to them. All Might apologized for getting them caught up in his heroics, explaining that he usually pays attention to keeping bystanders safe, but the city's sewer system was difficult to navigate. All Might laughed, while 𝗬/𝗵 faced him, grateful for what he had done. 𝗬/𝗵 acknowledged that it was no problem, noting that All Might had rescued his brother before he could. Normally, he would confront any villain or monster that tried to mess with them, but knowing that All Might was there made him think twice. All Might looked down at him, confused by what he heard. He asked if 𝗬/𝗵 said he would normally punch the villain. 𝗬/𝗵 confirmed that he would, adding that he also had a notebook for his brother. He grabbed his brother's notebook and pulled out a pen from his pocket, asking All Might if he could autograph it for Izuku, who was his biggest fan. All Might agreed but mentioned that he needed to secure the villain to take him to the authorities. 𝗬/𝗵 noticed a nearby empty soda bottle and picked it up, offering it to All Might as a makeshift container for the villain. All Might accepted the help and flipped the notebook open, noticing what was written inside. 𝗬/𝗵 explained that it contained information on the quirks of every hero, villain, or person Izuku had seen throughout his life, which would help them when they became heroes. All Might found it very interesting. As 𝗬/𝗵 continued to talk, moving around energetically, All Might finished signing the notebook and noticed 𝗬/𝗵 holding out the bottle with the villain inside. 𝗬/𝗵 handed it to All Might, who was shocked that the boy managed to contain the villain so quickly. He thanked 𝗬/𝗵 and mentioned that he needed to wake up Izuku. From Izuku's perspective, All Might was trying to wake him up, but 𝗬/𝗵 questioned whether slapping him would work. Izuku opened his eyes and was astonished to see All Might right in front of him. He quickly scooted away in disbelief, while 𝗬/𝗵 lifted him up, glad to see him okay. Izuku exclaimed in excitement about All Might's presence, and 𝗬/𝗵 smiled, acknowledging his brother's enthusiasm. Izuku searched for a pen to get an autograph, and 𝗬/𝗵 handed him the notebook, already prepared. Izuku expressed that this was the best day of his life, and he bowed quickly to All Might, who seemed slightly concerned for his safety. He thanked All Might, declaring that the autograph would be a family treasure for generations. All Might began to turn around, putting the villain in his pocket, and mentioned he needed to get the villain to the police. Izuku was dismayed that All Might was leaving, but 𝗬𝗏 reminded him that as the #1 hero, All Might was very busy. All Might confirmed that pro-heroes were constantly battling time and enemies. Izuku felt a surge of urgency, wanting to ask All Might so many questions. As All Might prepared to jump, Izuku instinctively reached for his leg. 𝗬𝗏 noticed and called out to his brother, but before he could finish, All Might leaped into the air, with Izuku hanging on. 𝗬𝗏 sighed, realizing he had to catch up to them. He jumped after All Might, surprising the hero with his agility. All Might was astonished that 𝗬𝗏 not only contained the villain but also had the strength to jump so high. 𝗬𝗏 explained that he was there to ensure his brother's safety, as Izuku was still holding on to All Might's leg. All Might tried to get Izuku to let go, but 𝗬𝗏 pointed out that they were high in the air, and if Izuku let go he would fall. Izuku panicked at the thought of falling, and All Might paused, realizing the truth in their words. 𝗬𝗏 then teased Izuku about the difference between being a fan and a stalker, emphasizing that he should communicate better next time. Izuku admitted he had many questions for All Might, and 𝗬𝗏 noted that he should have mentioned it beforehand. Izuku turned to All Might, expressing his admiration and eagerness to ask questions. All Might agreed to listen, but urged Izuku to keep his eyes and mouth shut to avoid being overwhelmed by the wind. Izuku complied, covering his face to shield it from the wind. All Might sighed, realizing the situation he was in. He coughed slightly, and 𝗬𝗏 noticed a hint of concern on All Might's face. All Might insisted he was fine, but 𝗬𝗏 remained curious. The trio landed on the roof of a building, causing a cloud of dust to rise. 𝗬𝗏 coughed from the dust, while Izuku struggled to regain his bearings, feeling as if his whole life had flashed before his eyes. 𝗬𝗏 joked about swallowing a moth during the landing, and All Might, standing at the edge of the roof, commented on the recklessness of their actions. Someone would eventually let them in if they knocked on the door for a while, or 𝗬𝗏's brother could simply pick them up and land down. 𝗬𝗏 had to leave, but not before Izuku called out for a moment longer. All Might, the #1 hero, was in a hurry and insisted he had no time. Izuku, however, felt he needed to know something important. He recalled the words of encouragement from his brother 3 years prior, urging him to train hard and keep his dream alive. Izuku asked All Might if it was possible to become a hero without a quirk, expressing his doubts about being a normal kid without powers. 𝗬𝗏 watched, hoping All Might would provide the reassurance his brother needed. The legendary hero remained silent, leaving Izuku feeling even more uncertain. Meanwhile, a strange purple figure emerged from the ground, declaring its intent to eliminate humanity. The creature, Vaccine Man, focused its gaze on the city, preparing to rise into the air with determination. Back on the rooftop, All Might stood still, contemplating Izuku's question. 𝗬𝗏 silently pleaded for All Might to affirm that his brother could still be a hero despite lacking a quirk. Izuku's thoughts echoed with the voices of those who doubted him, but he held on to the memory of 𝗬𝗏's unwavering belief in him. In a flashback, 𝗬𝗏 had boldly declared that they would become the greatest heroes, refusing to let anyone stand in their way. Izuku reflected on how 𝗬𝗏 inspired him to strive for greatness, despite the challenges they faced. He expressed his longing to prove everyone wrong and to be a hero that people could look up to. As Izuku spoke, All Might began to show signs of distress, smoke emanating from his body. 𝗬𝗏 noticed the change and felt a surge of concern for his idol. Izuku continued, sharing his dreams of saving people and being a hero, while 𝗬𝗏 gently lifted his brother's chin to redirect his gaze. In a different location, a villain trapped in a bottle recalled the events that led to his capture. He lamented his failed attempt to seize a certain kid's body and the interference of All Might. Nearby, a group of high schoolers discussed the recent encounter with Izuku, with one of them mentioning how 𝗬𝗏 would have defended his brother fiercely. Bakugo, the hot-tempered boy, dismissed the idea of 𝗬𝗏 and Izuku becoming heroes, recalling how 𝗬𝗏 had once defended Izuku against him. He felt frustrated by their aspirations and determined to show them the harsh realities of the world. The conversation shifted to a memorable incident at the start of the school year, where 𝗬𝗏 had impressed everyone during a baseball game. As he pitched, a sonic boom erupted when he released the ball, leaving Bakugo and the others in awe. The story continued, filled with determination, hope, and the unbreakable bond between brothers as they faced the challenges ahead. The ball broke through the court, headed towards the school, and passed through the building until it came to a stop in a nearby store. Everyone stared in shock at what had happened. Izuku winced, knowing that his brother was in serious trouble. 𝗬𝗏 remained expressionless as he spoke, acknowledging the situation with a simple oops. Bakugo expressed his frustration, claiming he could have handled the situation better with his quirk. The two boys then hurried to change the subject. One of their friends suggested they go to the arcade to take their minds off things, and Bakugo reluctantly agreed. Another friend proposed sneaking into the bar at the station to meet some girls, which Bakugo initially dismissed, worried about the consequences of getting caught. However, his friends pointed behind him in fear, drawing his attention to a looming threat. The sludge villain leaped towards Bakugo, declaring his intentions with a sinister grin. Meanwhile, at the Hero Organization headquarters, workers monitored the screens as they received alerts about a monster attacking in Mizudafu. Panic spread through the control room as they realized the situation was escalating. They were informed that Lightning Max and Smile Man were on their way, but there was uncertainty about the whereabouts of All Might, who had been dealing with another villain. On the outskirts of Mizudafu, Vaccine Man continued his approach towards the city, leaving two defeated humans behind. He believed that to destroy humanity, he needed to eliminate their hope, embodied by the symbol of peace. He planned to create chaos to draw out a hero, knowing that if he succeeded, it would weaken humanity's resolve. Back with 𝗬𝗏, Izuku, and All Might, Izuku was shocked to see All Might looking drastically different, resembling a frail man who hadn't exercised in years. 𝗬𝗏 tried to reassure him, but Izuku struggled to accept the truth. He was convinced that All Might was an imposter, but 𝗬𝗏 insisted it was really him, suggesting that perhaps All Might had changed his appearance to avoid being recognized. All Might, feeling the weight of their disbelief, explained that he was indeed All Might, despite his current state. He compared himself to those who flex at the pool, revealing that he was not always as strong as he appeared. Izuku was in disbelief, grappling with the reality that his hero was not invincible. 𝗬𝗏 encouraged Izuku to let All Might explain, reminding him that heroes are still human and can be hurt. All Might revealed the injuries he sustained in a past battle, explaining that they had left him unable to function as he once did. He shared that he could only work as a hero for a limited time each day, and the rest of the time he looked like this. Izuku was taken aback, recalling the battles All Might had fought. He wondered if it was the fight with Toxic Chainsaw or a dragon-level threat that had caused such damage. All Might clarified that while those battles were challenging, they were not the source of his injuries. He had fought a battle that was kept secret, emphasizing the importance of maintaining his image as the symbol of peace. 𝗬𝗏 reminded All Might that he was still human and could be hurt like anyone else. All Might acknowledged the pressure of being a hero and the fear that came with it. He expressed doubt about whether someone without a quirk could truly be a hero, which ignited a fire in Izuku. 𝗬𝗏 couldn't contain their frustration, passionately arguing that being a hero was not solely about having powers. They declared that All Might inspired others and that it was wrong to tell someone to give up on their dreams just because they lacked a quirk. 𝗬𝗏 asserted their own strength, despite not having a quirk, and demanded that All Might recognize that anyone could be a hero. All Might stood up, contemplating 𝗬𝗏's words. He acknowledged the curiosity in their strength without a quirk but cautioned that dreams must be attainable. 𝗬𝗏's anger boiled over, vowing never to support All Might again. Izuku and 𝗬𝗏 were determined to attend UA and become the greatest heroes in the world, ready to prove everyone wrong. As they walked, 𝗬𝗏 noticed Izuku looking discouraged. It was disheartening to hear doubts from his favorite hero, but 𝗬𝗏 decided to encourage him. They shared a moment of camaraderie, exchanging a fist bump, solidifying their resolve. Suddenly, a rumble echoed through the town, prompting Izuku to declare that a villain was nearby. Eager to help, They leaped off the roof and landed in an alley, creating a small crater. 𝗬𝗃 quickly covered it with a dumpster before following Izuku toward the commotion. Meanwhile, All Might was in pursuit of a villain but had lost track of him when a young boy had grabbed onto him. Frustrated, he received a call from the Hero Association, alerting him to a serious situation. A monster was heading for 𝗵𝗃𝗃, having already taken out 2 heroes. The threat level was alarming. In the streets near Tatooine Station, civilians were fleeing from the chaos caused by the sludge villain, who was attempting to take control of a child. 𝗕𝗵𝗃𝗁, a hero, arrived on the scene, furious at the villain's actions. He launched an attack, but the villain evaded it, leaving 𝗕𝗵𝗃𝗁 bewildered. The villain reveled in the chaos, threatening the child and showcasing his power. As the fight escalated, an alarm blared, warning citizens of the dragon-level threat. The heroes were torn between saving the child and ensuring the crowd's safety. All Might arrived, assessing the situation and feeling powerless against the villain's strength. He wished he had more power to turn the tide. Izuku, walking with 𝗬𝗃, felt defeated. Despite 𝗬𝗃's unwavering belief in him, Izuku was struggling with the weight of others' doubts. He contemplated giving up on his dream of becoming a hero, but 𝗬𝗃 refused to accept that. Just then, they heard the alarm and felt the ground shake. As they approached the scene, Izuku recognized the sludge villain, realizing he had escaped during All Might's battle. Guilt washed over him for the danger the child was in. 𝗬𝗃, sensing Izuku's turmoil, urged him to focus on the fight. They spotted Bakugo in trouble, and without thinking, Izuku rushed toward the chaos. 𝗕𝗵𝗃 shouted for them to stop, but Izuku was driven by instinct. The villain noticed him and launched an attack, but 𝗬𝗃 intervened, deflecting the threat with ease. Encouraged by 𝗬𝗃's support, Izuku felt a spark of determination. They were a team, and together they could face the challenge ahead. As they moved into action, 𝗬𝗃 used his speed to block attacks while Izuku found his courage. He threw his backpack at the villain, striking him in the eye. The villain retaliated, but 𝗬𝗃 took the hit, protecting Izuku. Fueled by their bond, they pressed on, ready to rescue Bakugo and confront the villain together. Kaken managed to get through the slime to talk to them. Izuku felt a surge of determination as he faced Kaken, tears in his eyes. He couldn't just stand by and watch Kaken in danger. Kaken shouted at him to get off, but the sludge villain threatened that he was done playing with them. 𝗬𝗃 arrived on the scene, his shirt slightly torn and singed, but he appeared unharmed. With a serious expression, he confronted the villain, reminding him of their previous encounter. The villain looked frightened, which allowed a strong arm to grab Kaken and begin to pull him free. All Might, in his powerful form, appeared, expressing his disappointment in himself for not living up to the ideals of a true hero. As the sludge villain attempted to attack, All Might prepared to counter. He declared his iconic move, and a massive gust of wind erupted, creating a cyclone that swept through the area. The crowd watched in awe as the weather changed dramatically, and they cheered for the hero. However, the situation escalated when a new threat emerged, a purple creature with antennas, identified as 𝗬𝗃𝗁. The crowd fell silent as the heroes prepared for battle. Izuku and 𝗬𝗃 stayed close, while Bakugo, exhausted, knelt nearby. All Might confronted 𝗬𝗃𝗁, who proclaimed himself a creation of Mother Earth, declaring that humanity must perish for the planet to heal. As the heroes strategized, 𝗬𝗃𝗁 threatened that none of them would leave alive. He extended his arm toward Izuku, 𝗬𝗃, Bakugo, and the baseball hero, but All Might rushed in to intercept. In a tense moment, 𝗬𝗃𝗁 blocked All Might's attack, but when he opened his hand, the group was unharmed. Everyone was confused, but 𝗬𝗃 stood firm, declaring his intention to become a great hero alongside his brother. The heroes were baffled by his bravery. As 𝗬𝗃𝗁 transformed and grew larger, he boasted about his power, but 𝗬𝗃's determination shone through. The crowd was left in shock at his audacity. 𝗬𝗃 noticed his fist was smoking and dismissed the villain's words, indicating that he had had enough. Later, the heroes collected the remnants of the sludge villain and prepared to send him to custody. Reporters flocked to All Might, Bakugo, and even Y/N, but he was more focused on finding Izuku. 𝗵𝗲𝗍 approached him, expressing her gratitude for his bravery and complimenting his strength. Y/N asked about his brother, and 𝗵𝗲𝗍 mentioned that the heroes were giving Izuku a pep talk. However, as Y/N looked over, he saw that they were scolding him instead. Furious, Y/N confronted the heroes, demanding they acknowledge Izuku's courage instead of criticizing him. He helped Izuku to his feet, and they prepared to leave, though 𝗵𝗲𝗍 handed Y/N her contact information and kissed his cheek, leaving him blushing. As they walked home, Izuku remarked on 𝗵𝗲𝗍's interest in Y/N, who found the encounter unexpected. They discussed sending a message to All Might to apologize for the earlier chaos, agreeing it was the best course of action. Y/N and Izuku turned to see Kakin approaching them. What could he possibly want now? Kakin made it clear that he would never ask for help from anyone he considered weak, including Izuku and his brother. He insisted that they should not look down on him, stating that he was fine on his own. Y/N, feeling a bit cheeky, interjected with a simple acknowledgement of their earlier assistance. Kakin was taken aback, unable to understand why Y/N was being so confident. Y/N pointed out that Kakin had just expressed gratitude in his own way, which only seemed to irritate him further. Kakin insisted he didn't need their help and claimed he could have handled the situation much better. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Y/N feeling a twinge of sympathy for him. Izuku, puzzled by Kakin's behavior, wondered what had just happened. Y/N admitted they had never truly understood Kakin. Izuku acknowledged that he hadn't done much during the encounter, while Y/N reassured him that every little effort counts in the life of a hero. They both shared a moment of concern about how their mother would react to the day's events, leading to a humorous realization that they might be in trouble. As they contemplated their future, Y/N silently wished for something to encourage Izuku. Suddenly, All Might appeared, catching Izuku off guard. All Might, with his signature flair, expressed his gratitude for their actions that day. He recognized Y/N for saving others and taking down a formidable foe, noting that even he struggled against such powerful threats. Y/N was surprised to hear All Might acknowledge his lack of a quirk but also recognize the importance of inspiring others. All Might then turned his attention to Izuku, who seemed astonished. He explained that if Izuku hadn't intervened, he would have been just another bystander. This acknowledgement brought a glimmer of hope to Izuku, who had always doubted his own worth. All Might emphasized that true heroes often act instinctively, without hesitation, and Y/N felt a surge of pride as he watched his brother absorb this wisdom. All Might then delivered the words that Izuku had longed to hear, encouraging him to believe in his potential to become a hero. Tears filled Izuku's eyes as he knelt, overwhelmed by the moment. Y/N felt a sense of relief, knowing that Izuku had finally received validation from someone as esteemed as All Might. However, the brothers were taken aback when All Might declared that he deemed Izuku worthy of inheriting his power. Izuku gasped, and Y/N was left bewildered, questioning what All Might meant by inherit. All Might reassured them that it was Izuku's choice to accept this incredible opportunity. As All Might prepared to explain the truth behind his abilities, Y/N braced himself for a long explanation. All Might revealed that the world believed he possessed super strength or invulnerability, but the reality was far more complex. He had not been born with this power, and the truth was something that would change everything for both brothers. It was a sacred torch passed down from someone else. The symbol of peace noticed the elder Midoriya and felt a wave of concern at the sight. All Might asked if everything was all right, and Y/N quickly returned to normal, sighing in relief. He mentioned that he was just bored from the long speech. All Might, confused, shook it off and continued. He informed Y/N that he was next and could grant him his abilities. Izuku, overwhelmed, muttered about the debate surrounding All Might's quirk. Y/N and All Might observed as Izuku continued to mutter rapidly. All Might moved closer to the elder Midoriya and inquired if Izuku did this often. Y/N confirmed that he did, adding that sometimes it seemed like Izuku had a quirk just for muttering. All Might, impressed yet concerned, urged Izuku to stop his rambling. Izuku snapped out of his trance, facing his idol, while 𝗬𝗏 listened intently, determined to support his brother. All Might explained that Izuku would need to adjust his reality and accept the new truth. He revealed that he could transfer his quirk to someone else, and the true name of his power was One for All. As he spoke, his palm glowed with white light, leaving both brothers in awe. Izuku repeated the name, and 𝗬𝗏 remarked that it sounded heroic. All Might shared that the first user intended for the quirk to remind its wielders of their purpose. One person would improve the power and then pass it on, allowing it to grow. This cultivated power enabled him to save those in need of a hero, revealing the truth behind his strength. Izuku, filled with curiosity, asked why All Might would choose to give him such a gift, expressing his fear of not living up to it. 𝗬𝗏 frowned at his brother, reminding him of his bravery when he faced the slime villain. All Might agreed, stating that he had been searching for a worthy successor and had witnessed both brothers jump into action when others hesitated. He acknowledged Izuku's efforts to save a child, recognizing his heroic spirit. Turning to 𝗬𝗏, All Might noted his impressive speed, strength, and durability, mentioning how he had taken an explosion without a scratch and defeated a formidable monster in one attack. 𝗬𝗏 attributed his strength to training, leaving All Might intrigued and eager to learn more about it later. He then turned back to Izuku, who was still emotional, and encouraged him to stop crying if he wanted to inherit his quirk. Izuku wiped his tears, feeling encouraged by both his brother and All Might, the greatest hero of all time. With newfound determination, he accepted the offer. All Might grinned, pleased with Izuku's response, and asked for their names. Izuku introduced himself as Izuku Midoriya, while 𝗬𝗏 stated he was 𝗬/Midoriya. All Might instructed them to meet him at the beach in 2 days for training and pointers. 𝗬𝗏, confused, asked what the pointers were for, and All Might explained that with 𝗬𝗏's strength, he needed to learn how to minimize collateral damage as a hero. Izuku muttered in agreement, and 𝗬𝗏 playfully protested. All Might laughed, looking forward to their time together, and advised them to head home and rest. Realizing how late it was, Izuku straightened up and exclaimed that they needed to go home before their mother got upset. He began running, waving goodbye to All Might, with 𝗬𝗏 following closely behind. All Might waved back before turning to leave. 𝗬𝗏 called out to All Might, expressing gratitude for the opportunity he had given Izuku. All Might smiled, affirming that a true hero not only saves people but also inspires them. 𝗬𝗏 gave a thumbs up and followed his brother, and the three parted ways, unaware of how their lives would change in the days to come. At 𝗕𝗏𝗄 Municipal Beach Park, Izuku found himself in a challenging situation. He was out on a trash-filled beach, ropes tied around him to a refrigerator that All Might was sitting on in his muscular form, trying to move it. 𝗬𝗏 was nearby, watching the scene unfold. All Might joked about how comfortable he was on the fridge and suggested 𝗬𝗏 join him. 𝗬𝗏 declined, pointing out that All Might's weight made it difficult for Izuku to move the appliance. All Might insisted he had lost weight, but 𝗬𝗏 countered that it didn't make things any easier for Izuku. Grateful for his brother's support, Izuku struggled to drag the refrigerator, questioning why he was tasked with moving trash across the beach. All Might laughed, taking a picture of him and explaining that he wasn't ready for his power. Izuku, frustrated and tearful, protested that he thought he was worthy. 𝗬𝗏 comforted him, and All Might explained that his quirk, One for All, was a tremendous force that required a strong body to inherit. He warned that an unprepared body could face dire consequences if it attempted to handle such power. Izuku, astonished, and 𝗬𝗏, amazed, realized just how formidable One for All truly was. 𝗬𝗏 and Izuku stood before the large piles of trash, contemplating their task. 𝗬𝗏 noted that this beach cleanup was part of Izuku's workout, and it reminded him of his own training. All Might, with a playful gesture, acknowledged 𝗬𝗏's comment and asked about his training regimen. 𝗬𝗏 explained that he had been doing 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, and running 10 kilometers every day for the past 3 years. All Might laughed, recalling how impressive that was, and expressed his surprise at 𝗬𝗁's strength. All Might then shared that he had done some research and discovered that this part of the beach used to be appealing but had fallen into disarray over the years. 𝗬/N and Izuku looked around at the litter surrounding them, realizing the truth in All Might's words. Izuku added that ocean currents carried debris to this spot, and people often took advantage of that by illegally dumping their trash, causing locals to avoid the area. 𝗬/N reminisced about the fond memories he, Izuku, and their mother had of the beach when they were younger, noting how upset their mother was that they could no longer visit. All Might reflected on how heroes today often sought glory by capturing flashy villains or defeating monsters. He demonstrated his point by effortlessly crushing a refrigerator, emphasizing that true heroism was about serving the community, even if it seemed mundane. He encouraged 𝗬/N to restore the coastline as a crucial step on his journey to becoming a hero. As All Might flattened the refrigerator, a shockwave sent trash flying, revealing a stunning view. 𝗬/N looked at the overwhelming amount of litter and felt daunted by the task ahead. Izuku expressed his concern about the sheer volume of trash, but 𝗬/N encouraged him to work hard if he wanted to attend UA. He believed that both of them could become heroes if they put in the effort, and he was determined to support Izuku in reaching his goals. All Might reassured them that he had a plan to help them prepare for the challenges ahead. He presented them with a detailed guide titled, Aim to Pass, American Dream Plan, that outlined their training and daily routines. 𝗬/N and Izuku were surprised to see their schedules, which included everything from workouts to sleep. All Might acknowledged that the journey would be difficult but expressed confidence in their abilities. 𝗬/N, motivated by his longing to attend UA, resolved to tackle the challenges ahead, while Izuku recognized the need to work harder than anyone else to succeed. With a shared determination, they fist-bumped and set to work, inspired by each other's commitment to their dreams. 6 months later, 𝗬/N sat on the couch in the living room, diligently working on a scenario sheet. He felt a sense of progress as the months passed. His brother was gaining confidence and training to inherit All Might's quirk, and their new diet allowed them to make the most of their resources. 𝗬/N pondered a scenario about facing a massive dragon-level monster and considered strategies that would minimize collateral damage while defeating it. In a flashback, as Izuku moved large pieces of trash to a truck, 𝗬/N presented his weekly work to All Might, who praised his improvement while encouraging him to provide more detail in his answers. 𝗬/N, curious about the threat levels, asked All Might for clarification, revealing his eagerness to learn and grow as a hero. All Might sighed as he face-bombed himself, realizing that Izuku had explained something important, but it had slipped 𝗬/N's mind. He reminded 𝗬/N to pay better attention if he wanted to be a hero. All Might explained that the Hero Association had established codes to categorize threats based on their strength. There were 5 levels. Wolf level, a potential threat to a single person, suitable for beginner heroes. Tiger level, which involved low-level villains and monsters that could endanger a larger group. Demon level, which could threaten a city and required more powerful heroes. Dragon level, which posed a threat to the entire country and typically needed 1 or 2 S-class heroes. And finally, God level, which represented threats to humanity itself, necessitating the involvement of all top tiers. 𝗬/N asked if there had ever been a God-level threat before, to which All Might replied that there had not been one, and they should be thankful for that. He expressed concern that if a God-level threat were ever announced, it would likely result in catastrophic loss of life. They primarily used these classifications for monsters, rather than villains. Suddenly, they heard a commotion and turned to see Izuku trapped under a large pile of trash, his arm visible as he struggled to free himself. 𝗬/N rushed to help his brother out of the mess. Inko, their mother, called for 𝗬/N, who looked up to see her wearing a cooking apron, a worried expression on her face. She asked if he knew where Izuku had gone for his workout. 𝗬/N thought for a moment, realizing he didn't know where Izuku was running with All Might. When he replied that he didn't know, Inko expressed concern about unusual mosquito activity in Kamino, mentioning that many animals had been found drained of BLD. She hoped Izuku was not near there. 𝗬/𝗵 reassured himself that Izuku would be fine with All Might by his side, but a nagging feeling made him wish he had gone with him. He reminded himself that if they were going to be heroes, he needed to let Izuku fight his own battles. Inko sighed and returned to the kitchen, pondering why her oldest son seemed so off after gaining strength. 𝗬/𝗵 returned to his worksheet, preparing to write, until he noticed a mosquito on his hand. He slapped at it, thinking he had caught it, but it flew away, taunting him. Frustrated, he chased the insect around the room until he noticed the front door slightly ajar, and the mosquito buzzed away, as if mocking him. Determined, 𝗬/𝗵 ran to the cleaning cupboard, grabbed a bottle of bug spray, and dashed after the bug, shouting in frustration. Inko, having left the kitchen to check on 𝗬/𝗵, noticed the front door was open and her son was missing. She wondered where he had run off to. Meanwhile, in 𝗵𝗄, a young man with a mechanical body observed the strange behavior of the mosquitoes. Reports of mummified livestock had surfaced, and the threat level was classified as demon. Though he was not a hero, he was determined to find and eliminate the source of the trouble by following the swarm of insects. In a different part of 𝗵𝗄, All Might rode an electric scooter, supervising young Midoriya as he trained. He encouraged Midoriya to keep moving, noting the boy's determination. All Might reflected on the past 6 months, during which he had trained both Izuku and 𝗬/𝗵. He was surprised by 𝗬/𝗵's strength, which seemed to come from basic exercises, raising questions in All Might's mind. Suddenly, his phone beeped with a call from the Hero Association. 𝗬𝗁 informed him about reports of strange mosquito behavior and the draining of livestock, indicating a possible demon-level monster or a villain with a quirk to control mosquitoes. The area had been evacuated, but nearby cities could be at risk. All Might realized he needed to get Midoriya out of the area quickly. He called out to Midoriya, telling him they needed to end their training for the day due to a serious situation in town. Midoriya pointed down the street, where a thug was taking advantage of the evacuation, carrying a bag of stolen valuables. The thug boasted about the lack of heroes to stop him, unaware of the danger lurking nearby. As All Might prepared to deal with the thug, a sudden breeze swept through the street. Midoriya, looking frightened, pointed behind All Might. Turning around, All Might was shocked to see a massive swarm of mosquitoes approaching. The sight was alarming, and they both watched as the swarm engulfed the thug, who screamed in terror. Moments later, the insects dispersed, leaving behind only a desiccated skeleton. Midoriya gasped in horror at the scene. I followed the path of the flying bugs and discovered that they, along with countless mosquitoes, were circling a woman whose features resembled the insects around her. This was the source of the strange behavior of the bugs. The woman commanded the swarm, urging them to gather more for her. Realizing the danger, I knew I had to get Midoriya out of there. However, in my current form, we wouldn't get far. Perhaps if I transformed while we ran. Suddenly, a massive burst of flame shot toward the woman, but the mosquitoes intercepted it. A young man, likely the same age as 𝗬/𝗵, stood nearby. He didn't appear fully human, he was a cyborg. His serious expression indicated he meant business. He warned us to leave immediately, stating that the area was unsafe. All Might questioned whether he was a hero, to which the cyborg replied he was not, but that it didn't matter. He faced the woman, raising his hand and declaring her responsible for the mosquito's behavior. He deduced that she was likely controlling them by drawing BLD from her victims. Intrigued, I noted that he could discern between a monster and a human. He suggested that if he eliminated her, the swarm might disperse. It was clear he was clever, but I needed to prioritize getting Midoriya to safety. Just then, the woman declared that our next meals had arrived and commanded the swarm to drain us. I had no choice but to transform. As I did, I grabbed Midoriya and moved out of the swarm's path, but the cyborg remained still, allowing the bugs to surround him. All Might urged the cyborg to escape while he would assist him. Midoriya acknowledged the instruction. The cyborg then declared his intent to incinerate the threat. An explosion followed, but the cyborg remained unharmed, his hand raised as he used fire to burn away the swarm. He declared his intention to eliminate the woman, who taunted him, challenging him to try. This was shaping up to be an interesting confrontation. As we moved along the route toward 𝗵𝗄𝗃, 𝗬/N felt victorious, believing he had finally caught the insect, only to see it escape. Frustrated, he resumed his pursuit. In 𝗵𝗄𝗃, the cyborg fired again at the monster girl, but she easily dodged the attack. Using the distraction, he ran up the side of a building and leaped toward her. The woman smiled, evading his punch and attempting to slash at him. He blocked her attack, and they both struggled for 𝗕𝗄𝗃. His arm ignited with blue flames, pushing him back as he landed on a nearby building and used his thrusters to close the distance. They exchanged blows, seemingly evenly matched, until she struck him down to the ground. He spun and landed on his feet. Before either could act again, All Might appeared, leaping toward the insect creature. He unleashed a powerful attack, but she managed to evade it, though the shockwave sent her flying backward. She regained control with her wings as 𝗕𝗄𝗃 returned his focus to the fight. All Might landed beside 𝗕𝗄𝗃 and addressed him, indicating they needed to discuss the use of his powers without a license. The cyborg acknowledged this. The woman, seeing All Might, expressed her longing for his BLD, believing it would make her stronger. 𝗕𝗄𝗃 fired flames at her while All Might used bursts of air to attack. The woman skillfully dodged their efforts. As she neared them, she used her needle to strike, removing 𝗕𝗄𝗃's left arm and slashing All Might's shirt. She threatened to pierce All Might's flesh and claimed she would target 𝗬/N next. However, she soon realized her legs were gone, having been severed by 𝗕𝗄𝗃. He had discarded them, while All Might caught his breath, acknowledging her speed and the potential danger of her consuming BLD. The woman summoned her swarm as 𝗕𝗄𝗃 fired another burst of flames. All Might expelled the remaining insects with a powerful swing. She flew high to gain distance, contemplating her next move. She noticed Izuku hiding nearby, having witnessed the chaos. Seeing an opportunity, she planned to use Izuku as a distraction, knowing All Might would protect him. She called to her minions, commanding them to provide her with BLD. Both heroes recognized the threat she posed. All Might warned that it was not good, while 𝗕𝗄𝗃 urged him to take Izuku to safety, stating he would handle the swarm. All Might considered this, realizing the urgency. Just then, 𝗬/N charged toward them, spraying bug spray as he pursued the mosquito. He shouted that their confrontation was not over. Izuku emerged from his hiding spot, confused by 𝗬/N's actions. 𝗬/N stopped, spitting out the bug spray he had accidentally inhaled, expressing his disgust. Izuku called out to him, and 𝗬/N turned, his expression shifting to one of concern as he asked about All Might. Upon seeing the swarm, he realized the danger they faced. All Might urged 𝗬/N to take his brother to safety, explaining that they were dealing with a monster controlling the insects for malicious purposes. 𝗕𝗄𝗃 confirmed that the swarm would remain as long as the monster was alive. It was only a matter of time before they attacked. 𝗬/N looked at 𝗕𝗄𝗃 with curiosity, asking who he was. 𝗕𝗄𝗃, filled with urgency, insisted that it didn't matter and that they needed to evacuate immediately. 𝗬/N questioned what would happen to the others, but laughter echoed as a swarm approached them. Izuku screamed as the swarm drew closer, prompting All Might to swiftly grab him and leap high into the air, narrowly avoiding the danger. In the chaos, 𝗕𝗄𝗃 unleashed his firepower, igniting the swarm of mosquitoes and causing a significant explosion. Amidst the flames, 𝗕𝗄𝗃 stood unharmed, reflecting on the situation. He expressed his disappointment at the intelligence of their adversary, realizing that the swarm had been gathered together for easy destruction. He noted that there were no living beings within a 500-meter radius, allowing him to act without concern, except for the new arrival, whom All Might had saved. 𝗬/N, grateful for 𝗕𝗄𝗃's intervention, praised him for his incredible abilities, leaving 𝗕𝗄𝗃 momentarily speechless. All Might, landing with Izuku still clinging to him, was taken aback by 𝗬/N's unexpected state of undress. As they processed the situation, the sound of wings drew their attention to Mosquito Girl, who had transformed and boasted about her newfound strength. She demonstrated her power by slashing at a nearby building, leaving All Might and 𝗕𝗄𝗃 visibly concerned. They knew All Might could handle the threat, but the intensity of Mosquito Girl's strength could pose a risk to him. Before they could react, Mosquito Girl attacked 𝗕𝗏, slashing him with incredible force. He swung back but was easily evaded, sent soaring into the air. All Might watched in horror as 𝗕𝗏 suffered multiple strikes, leaving him vulnerable. Mosquito Girl taunted him, claiming she would drain All Might's BLD next. As 𝗕𝗏 fell, he realized that the more BLD she consumed, the stronger she became. All Might, desperate to intervene, leaped toward her but missed. Mosquito Girl, relishing her victory, approached 𝗕𝗏, declaring her intent to claim his head. In a moment of desperation, 𝗕𝗏 activated his core, glowing blue as he prepared for self-destruction, apologizing to his mentor in his thoughts. Just as Mosquito Girl was about to finish him off, 𝗬/N intervened, striking her with a powerful blow that sent her crashing into a nearby building. 𝗕𝗏 was astonished that someone so young could defeat such a formidable foe in a single strike. 𝗬/N remarked on how much he disliked bugs. All Might, landing beside 𝗬/N, praised him for his swift action, while 𝗬/N credited All Might's training for his success. Izuku, noticing 𝗕𝗏's condition, pointed out that he needed repairs. All Might agreed, suggesting Izuku head home while he took 𝗕𝗏 for maintenance. As they prepared to leave, 𝗕𝗏 reached out, pleading for 𝗬/N's name. When 𝗬/N introduced himself, 𝗕𝗏 expressed his longing to become his disciple, leaving both Izuku and All Might in shock. 𝗬/N, surprised but accepting, turned to leave, only to pause and reconsider. 2 days later, a metal hand knocked on the Midoriya household door. 𝗕𝗏 stood outside, ready to begin his training under 𝗬/N. Inko opened the door, surprised by the sight of the mostly mechanical young man. 𝗕𝗏 introduced himself and stated his purpose, prompting Inko to invite him inside. 𝗬/N emerged from his room, recognizing 𝗕𝗏 and expressing his surprise at his arrival. 𝗕𝗏 bowed respectfully, ready for training. 𝗬/N requested that 𝗕𝗏 not call him sensei, to which 𝗕𝗏 responded with 𝗕𝗏, leading to a playful exchange. Izuku, now dressed for his workout, greeted 𝗕𝗏 and introduced himself as 𝗬/N's brother. The atmosphere was initially awkward until Inko broke the silence by offering tea. After a brief pause, 𝗬/N suggested that 𝗕𝗏 should go home after their drink, expressing his reluctance to take on a disciple. Izuku, sipping his tea, noticed that 𝗕𝗏 appeared to be fully repaired. 𝗕𝗏 explained that his mechanical body allowed for quick repairs as long as parts were available. Curious, Izuku asked about 𝗕𝗏's fire attacks during the battle. 𝗕𝗏 clarified that his quirk, called 𝗵𝗃𝗄, allowed him to produce flames, which had been weak until his transformation enhanced its strength. 𝗬/N, now engaged in the conversation, was prompted by 𝗕𝗏 to share his own quirk, leading to a moment of anticipation in the room. 𝗕𝗏 was surprised to learn that 𝗬/N was quirkless. He had assumed that after witnessing 𝗬/N's power, he would possess an enhancement-type quirk. 𝗬/N, feeling defensive, expressed his frustration, questioning 𝗕𝗏's problem with being quirkless. 𝗕𝗏, still processing this information, began to share his own story. He recounted how, for years ago, at the age of 12, he had lived a peaceful life with his family until a rogue cyborg attacked their town. The devastation was immense, and 𝗕𝗏 lost everything, including his family. Izuku listened in shock, recalling an article about the incident that had occurred before any heroes could intervene. Despite the tragedy, 𝗕𝗏 survived, but he was left feeling weak and alone. It was then that Dr. Casino arrived, accompanying a group of heroes who were too late to prevent the disaster. 𝗕𝗏 had asked Dr. Casino to perform body modification surgery on him, which transformed him into a cyborg dedicated to fighting for justice. He vowed to one day confront the evil cyborg responsible for his family's demise. As 𝗕𝗏 continued, 𝗬/N appeared increasingly uninterested. 𝗕𝗏 spoke of his journey over the past 4 years, battling evil and evading authorities, frustrated by his inability to find the rogue cyborg. He described how he had let his guard down during a recent encounter with a powerful monster, which nearly cost him his life. He expressed his gratitude to 𝗬𝗏 for saving him, recognizing the weight of his responsibility to defeat the cyborg. 𝗬𝗏, overwhelmed by Genos's lengthy monologue, interrupted him, asking him to keep his thoughts brief. 𝗬𝗏𝗁, their mother, entered the room, admonishing 𝗬𝗏 for his rudeness and reminding him of his own rules. 𝗬𝗏 sheepishly apologized, and 𝗬𝗏𝗁 left the room. Izuku noticed the time and panicked, realizing they were late for training. 𝗬𝗏 joined in the panic, rushing to gather his things. Genos, intrigued by the mention of training, requested to accompany them to learn how 𝗬𝗏 had become so strong. 𝗬𝗏 reluctantly agreed, and they made their way out, with Genos thanking 𝗬𝗏𝗁 for the tea. As they headed to the beach for training, Genos inquired about 𝗬𝗏's decision to attend UA, given his strength. 𝗬𝗏 explained that he wanted to learn how to be a hero and help Izuku achieve his dreams as well. Genos admired 𝗬𝗏's humility and compassion, recognizing that despite his power, he was committed to continuous learning. Upon arriving at the beach, they found All Might waiting for them. 𝗬𝗏 handed over his completed worksheets to the hero, introducing Genos as his new disciple. Genos bowed respectfully to All Might, who was taken aback by the presence of the young cyborg. Kusuno informed Genos about the situation. Genos acknowledged this, mentioning that after being dropped off at the lab, All Might had reverted to his original form while he was still conscious. All Might face-bombed, incredulous at what he had just heard. He realized he needed to have a serious conversation with Kusuno. All Might then proceeded to explain everything to Genos. His injury, the time limit he faced, the legacy of One for All, and how he was training Izuku to be his successor. He also offered 𝗬𝗏 some advice on how to become a better hero. Genos expressed his amazement at the concept of a quirk that had been passed down through great heroes. Izuku and 𝗬𝗏 exchanged glances as Genos processed the information. Genos then offered to assist All Might in training Midoriya, suggesting that his extensive memory banks of fighting styles could enhance Izuku's chances of being accepted into UA. The three of them looked at Genos in surprise, and All Might began to think deeply about the proposal. He recognized Genos as a skilled fighter, recalling how he had handled a tough battle against a formidable foe. All Might decided to accept Genos's offer but insisted on confidentiality regarding the information he had shared. Genos bowed, his face set with determination, promising to keep everything secret and even stating that he would self-destruct if anyone attempted to extract the information from his memory. 𝗬𝗏, Izuku, and All Might exchanged concerned looks at Genos's extreme response. Izuku suggested that such measures were unnecessary, and 𝗬𝗏 agreed, emphasizing that simply keeping the information quiet was sufficient. 𝗬𝗏 then had an idea and smiled at Genos, proposing that he join them in their journey to UA. Genos hesitated, expressing uncertainty about wanting to be a hero. 𝗬𝗏 countered with a deal. If Genos helped prepare Izuku for the entrance exam and all three were accepted, he would make Genos his disciple. All Might and Izuku were taken aback by this offer, especially Izuku, who recognized 𝗬𝗏's sincerity in his smile. Genos returned the smile, agreeing to the plan. All Might encouraged them to get to work, and they all agreed enthusiastically. Izuku rushed to the garbage piles to begin his task, while 𝗬𝗏 moved next to All Might to hand him worksheets. Genos started preparing a training area for Izuku. 2 months later, the sun rose as All Might arrived at the beach, where 𝗬𝗏 and Genos were already waiting. All Might gasped at the sight before him. The sound of shouting drew his attention, and he saw Izuku standing triumphantly on top of a garbage pile, yelling with excitement. All Might was astonished to see that Izuku had even cleaned beyond the area he had assigned. 𝗬𝗏 confirmed his belief in Izuku's capabilities, while Genos noted that Izuku had completed his task with only 6 minutes and 43 seconds to spare. All Might was thrilled, exclaiming that Izuku had exceeded his expectations. Just then, Izuku lost his balance and fell from the pile, but 𝗬𝗏 caught him, with Genos and All Might right behind them. All Might praised Izuku for his excellent work. Izuku, exhausted yet smiling, expressed his accomplishment to his brother, mentor, and friend. 𝗬𝗏 set him on his feet, beaming with pride. 𝗓𝗏 congratulated Izuku on his impressive performance, and All Might echoed the sentiment, expressing his admiration for Izuku's progress. 𝗬𝗏 playfully punched All Might's arm, causing the symbol of peace to wince slightly. All Might requested that 𝗬𝗏 refrain from doing that again, likening it to being hit with a sledgehammer. He then pulled out his phone to show them a picture from 10 months ago, depicting Izuku in tears. He highlighted Izuku's remarkable improvement and reminded him that there was still a long journey ahead before he could inherit All Might's full power. 𝗬𝗏 and 𝗓𝗏 smiled at Izuku, but he looked down at his hands, doubt creeping into his mind. He questioned whether he truly deserved the support and effort that 𝗬𝗏, 𝗓𝗏, and All Might had invested in him. 𝗬𝗏 reassured his brother, emphasizing that it was Izuku's hard work that had led to his success, not anyone else's. 𝗓𝗏 echoed this sentiment, affirming that Izuku should be proud of his achievements. All Might laughed and gave a thumbs up to both 𝗬𝗏 and 𝗓𝗏, stating that they had expressed his thoughts perfectly. He then prepared to reward Izuku, who stood ready for the moment. All Might explained that there was a significant difference between luck and deserving something, urging Izuku to remember that distinction. As All Might held out a strand of his hair, he instructed Izuku to eat it to inherit his power. The three teens were taken aback, feeling confused and somewhat disgusted by the request. All Might clarified that this was the way to inherit his quirk. Izuku expressed his surprise at the unconventional method, while 𝗓𝗏 and 𝗬𝗏 agreed that they had envisioned a more majestic transfer of power. All Might insisted there was no time to waste, urging them to hurry for the exam. Izuku yelped as he swallowed the hair, with 𝗬𝗏 patting his back and encouraging him to move quickly for the entrance exam. He was even shaking. 𝗬𝗏 noticed his little brother's anxiety and asked if he was okay. Izuku hesitated, admitting that he was worried about the exam and hadn't had a chance to test his new power. 𝗬𝗏 recalled that All Might had given Izuku one for all, and he still felt uneasy thinking about how Izuku had to consume a hair to receive it. Izuku expressed disappointment, feeling that nothing significant had happened yet. 𝗬𝗏 encouraged him, suggesting that something could happen during the exam. 𝗓𝗏 agreed, reminding them that All Might had mentioned it would take about an hour before Izuku could fully utilize his new power. Just then, Bakugo appeared, and 𝗬𝗏 felt a wave of annoyance wash over him. He had hoped to avoid Bakugo, especially since he had a plan to accidentally hurt him during the exam. Izuku gasped upon seeing Bakugo, who threatened them to get out of his way. 𝗬𝗏 found Bakugo's constant aggression tiresome, but Izuku seemed intimidated as usual. He managed to greet Bakugo, wishing everyone good luck, but Bakugo simply walked past, leaving 𝗬𝗏 to wonder how his parents dealt with him. Despite Bakugo's harsh demeanor, he had been slightly less aggressive since the incident with the slime villain. 𝗓𝗏 remarked that he already disliked Bakugo after just a brief encounter. 𝗬𝗏 confirmed this sentiment. He overheard participants discussing his previous victory over a monster, and to his surprise, people seemed to recognize him. One participant noted that he had taken down the monster in one punch, while another commented on his looks. 𝗬𝗏 was taken aback by the attention and asked Izuku if he knew why everyone was talking about him. Izuku shrugged, while 𝗓𝗏 looked surprised that 𝗬𝗏 was unaware of his newfound fame. 𝗓𝗏 explained that a bystander had recorded 𝗬𝗏 defeating a dragon-level monster, and the video had gone viral, amassing over 1 billion views. 𝗬𝗏 was impressed but reminded Izuku that they needed to focus on the exam. He encouraged Izuku to stop being afraid of Bakugo, assuring him that he was no longer defenseless and had a powerful quirk. 𝗓𝗏 echoed this sentiment, urging Izuku to face challenges like All Might. Izuku smiled, feeling encouraged, and declared that they were going to be heroes. Just then, Izuku tripped, but 𝗬𝗏 noticed a girl with brown hair had caught him with her quirk. She introduced herself as Ochako and apologized for not asking first. 𝗬𝗏 recognized the moment and decided to help his brother. He thanked Ochako for her assistance and tried to redirect the conversation back to Izuku. Ochako, intrigued, asked if 𝗬/N was the one who had taken down the purple monster. 𝗬/N quickly dismissed it, wanting to keep the focus on Izuku. Ochako then expressed how nerve-wracking the situation was, to which 𝗬/N confidently replied that they would succeed in the exam. However, Izuku remained speechless, caught off guard by the girl's presence. As Ochako waved goodbye and walked inside, 𝗬/N encouraged Izuku, who was still in shock at having spoken to a girl. 𝗬/N smiled, while Genos looked confused. 𝗬/N playfully urged Izuku to get moving, and they entered the exam venue with Izuku feeling more confident. In the auditorium, Present Mic, the voice hero, attempted to energize the candidates but was met with silence. 𝗬/N felt himself drifting off, while Izuku was starstruck by the pro hero. Present Mic continued, explaining the practical exam format, but 𝗬/N found him loud and annoying. Izuku was excited, recalling how he listened to Present Mic's radio show daily. Bakugo interrupted, demanding silence, while Present Mic explained that they would be conducting 10-minute mock battles in urban settings. After the announcement, the candidates prepared to head to their designated battle centers, with Izuku and Genos in Center B, 𝗬/N in C, and Bakugo in A. Bakugo noted that they were being separated to prevent teamwork, and Izuku agreed, acknowledging the challenge ahead. Our examinee numbers were sequential, but we were assigned to different battle centers. Genos explained that it was part of the test. They wanted to see what we could do without any assistance. Bakugo glared at Izuku in annoyance, demanding he take his eyes off his card. Izuku yelped and quickly looked away, while 𝗬/N shot a fierce glare at the spiky-haired boy. Bakugo expressed his anticipation for the chance to crush Izuku, to which 𝗬/N retorted that he was looking forward to sending Bakugo flying to the next country. Bakugo growled, trying to mask his fear under 𝗬/N's intense gaze, which felt as if it pierced through to his very soul. Their attention shifted back to Present Mic, who was animatedly speaking while a video game-like version of himself fought robots on the screen behind him. He explained the targets for the trial, revealing there were 3 types of foe villains in every battle. Points would be awarded based on their difficulty, so it was crucial to choose wisely. The goal was to use their quirks to rack up points by defeating these foe villains and monsters, all while keeping things heroic. Attacking fellow examinees was strictly forbidden. A boy wearing glasses stood up, hand raised, holding a printout. He asked Present Mic about a discrepancy he noticed, pointing out that 4 types of villains were listed instead of 3. He expressed that such an error in official UA materials was unacceptable for exemplary students. 𝗬/N observed the boy with a bland expression and whispered to his brother and Genos about his perfectionist demeanor. The boy then pointed at the Midoriya brothers, surprising Izuku. He chastised Izuku for muttering and 𝗬/N for appearing to doze off, suggesting that if they couldn't take the test seriously, they should leave, as they were distracting others. Izuku felt sheepish and apologized, causing laughter among the students. 𝗬/N stood up, glaring at the glasses-wearing boy, who looked frightened under his intense gaze. He told him to be quiet and let Present Mic finish explaining the test, warning him not to mess with his brother again. The boy gulped in fear and nodded, sitting back down. Present Mic looked relieved when 𝗬/N returned to his seat. The screen displayed the last figure, and Present Mic changed direction to avoid it. He explained that the 4th villain type was worth 0 points and served merely as an obstacle to avoid. While it could be defeated, there was little point in doing so, and he recommended focusing on the more valuable targets. 𝗬/N turned to Izuku, seeking clarification, and Izuku explained that these obstacles were akin to traps in video games, while the others contributed to their total score. 𝗬/N realized the entire trial resembled a video game. Present Mic concluded his speech with a quote from General Napoleon Bonaparte about true heroes overcoming life's misfortunes. 𝗬/N thought to himself that the motto was rather underwhelming. Present Mic encouraged everyone to get ready and called for a spirited response, but the room fell silent until a random student shouted a negative comment. Present Mic dismissed everyone, wishing them luck and hoping they had practiced more than just their academics. As they left, 𝗬/N and Izuku grabbed identical blue tracksuits from their backpacks to change into, while 𝗓𝗄𝘃 opted for a white shirt and breathes. 𝗧𝗵 remarked that they just needed to achieve a passing score by fighting robots, while Izuku admitted to feeling nervous. 𝗧/N, confused by his brother's anxiety, encouraged him to remember everything he had practiced over the past 10 months and assured him that he could show everyone his power. 𝗓𝗄𝘃 smiled at Izuku, affirming that their chances of success were extremely high. 𝗧/N gave 𝗓𝗄𝘃 a skeptical look, but Izuku felt reassured by their support and resolved to pass the exam. He declared that he had worked too hard to give up, and 𝗧/N encouraged him with a fist bump, calling it a hero P&D. Izuku went off to change, leaving 𝗧/N and 𝗓𝗄𝘃 alone. 𝗧/N turned to 𝗓𝗄𝘃, asking him to keep an eye on Izuku and help if needed, wishing him good luck. 𝗓𝗄𝘃 bowed, promising to ensure both he and Izuku passed. 𝗧/N chuckled as he went to change, waving goodbye to his brother as he headed toward his battle center. While changing, Izuku reflected on 𝗧/N's faith in him and felt a surge of determination. He faced the mirror, telling himself he could do this and would pass the exam to get into UA. As 𝗧/N walked toward Battle Center C, he admired the school's luxury and wondered about its cost. He accidentally bumped into someone, causing them to fall. The girl looked up at him, blushing at his appearance and nervously laughing. She assured him she was fine as 𝗧/N extended a hand to help her up. The girl smiled and introduced herself as Mina Ishido. 𝗧/N, slightly confused by her enthusiasm, agreed to walk to the battle center together. Mina brightened at the prospect and grabbed his arm, introducing herself while 𝗧/N simply stated his name. Why was she putting his arm between her chest? Mina thought the name was cute. As they walked, Mina stared at him, her mind realizing something. She asked if he was the guy who took down that monster in one punch. He wondered if everyone he met would ask him the same thing. At the battle center, every candidate stared in awe at the impressive structure, admiring its size and design. Students expressed their amazement, commenting on how it resembled a whole city and speculating on the cost of its construction. UA was truly remarkable. 𝗓𝗄𝘃 and Izuku faced the mock city, the cyborg calm and prepared, his eyes scanning the area, while Izuku felt a bit nervous but not as much as before. He gulped before speaking to his cyborg companion, questioning why none of the other candidates seemed nervous. Some of them even had special gear. 𝗓𝗄𝘃 noticed Izuku's elevated heartbeat and BLD pressure. He knew he had to help Izuku relax so he could pass the exam with flying colors. If the three of them passed, 𝗓𝗄𝘃 would officially become 𝗵𝘃𝗲/N's disciple, and he wanted to support his friend. He advised Izuku to calm down, explaining that stressing before the exam would only make it harder. Izuku took a deep breath, grateful for 𝗓𝗄𝘃's support. Izuku looked around and noticed the girl who had helped him earlier, trying to calm herself. He recognized her as the nice girl he met at the school gates. 𝗓𝗄𝘃 encouraged Izuku to thank her for her assistance. Although nervous, Izuku felt his courage growing and decided to approach her. As he began walking toward her, 𝗓𝗄𝘃 smiled, noticing the positive change in Izuku's vital signs. However, their moment was interrupted when a boy with glasses grabbed Izuku's shoulder, questioning his intentions. Izuku quickly reassured him that he meant no harm. 𝗓𝗄𝘃 stepped in, glaring at the glasses-wearing boy, insisting that Izuku was simply going to thank her for her help. The boy apologized but insisted he was just looking out for everyone's chances at the prestigious school. 𝗓𝗄𝘃, undeterred, warned the boy to back off, stating that Izuku was honorable and had powers far greater than his own. The onlookers watched the confrontation, murmuring among themselves about the resemblance between the two boys and the impressive cyborg. Suddenly, 𝗓𝗄𝘃 received a message from the UA software he had hacked. Without warning, he grabbed Izuku's arm and dashed into the mock city, leaving everyone else behind. He explained that there was no countdown in a real battle. It was about moving and fighting to survive. President 𝗵𝘃's voice rang out, encouraging everyone to follow their lead. The candidates rushed into the city, eager to earn points. As 𝗓𝗄𝘃 searched for robots to defeat, Izuku struggled to keep up, wondering how 𝗧/N was faring. Meanwhile, earlier at Battle Center C, 𝗧/N was walking with Ishido, who wanted to engage him in conversation. He was trying his best to pay attention, recalling how his mother disapproved of his lack of focus. Mina asked about his quirk, and he revealed that he didn't have one, which shocked her. She couldn't believe someone quirkless could be so strong. Before they could continue, Present Mic interrupted, urging everyone to get moving. Realizing the urgency, 𝗬𝗏𝗵 quickly ran to catch up with the others, searching for point robots. He spotted some green robots and began to punch them, accumulating points. He had to show that his training was not in vain. Meanwhile, Genos launched himself at another three-pointer, easily punching through it. He was concerned that most of the other candidates had quirks that allowed them to destroy the robots quickly. He worried about Izuku, knowing that All Might had mentioned it might take time for him to feel the effects of his new power. Genos was determined not to fail his friends again. He focused on the task at hand, knowing that Izuku needed him. I incinerated the robots, leaving them in ruins, and then searched for Midoriya. Scaling the side of a building, I scanned the area and spotted him to the southwest. I had to hurry. In just under a minute, I found him, desperately searching for any remaining bots, but he was surrounded by debris. I leaped down, catching him off guard. Genos asked Midoriya if he had collected any points, to which Midoriya replied that everyone had beaten him to it. Frustrated, I looked around for a group of intact robots that still had points. There, just a few miles south, was a group of three-pointers. I urged Midoriya to follow me at a slower pace, hoping we wouldn't be interrupted. As we ran, I asked Midoriya if he felt any signs from One for All, if he felt stronger or if his muscles were changing. He responded that he felt nothing. I couldn't believe it. 3 hours had passed without any progress. I encouraged him to concentrate and see if he felt anything by the time we reached our destination. As we neared our goal, the ground began to rumble, causing us to stop. A massive robot appeared before us, clearly the zero-pointer. It was no wonder it was worth no points. Most examinees with combat quirks wouldn't stand a chance against something so enormous. Midoriya squealed in fear, and I knew this wasn't the time for hesitation. I had to help him gather enough points to pass. I shook him from his trance, urging him to follow me. Suddenly, Present Mic announced that there were less than 2 minutes remaining. Panic surged through me. I had to think quickly. As I prepared to propel myself over the zero-pointer with Midoriya, I noticed Ochako trapped under rubble, the giant robot looming closer. Midoriya insisted I help her, and I saw the determination in his eyes. I ran to lift the debris off her, urging her to get up quickly. Just then, I noticed Midoriya rising into the air, his right arm glowing. He unleashed a powerful punch against the robot, shouting out a battle cry. Incredible! He had tapped into One for All. But then I noticed his limbs were flailing. Had he injured himself? I remembered that Midoriya's training was meant to prepare his body for One for All, not to use it at full strength yet. He couldn't stop his fall, and I couldn't reach him in time. I turned to Ochako, asking for her help. I needed her to slow Midoriya's fall when I gave the signal. To my relief, she nodded without hesitation. I scooped her up and launched us into the air, timing our descent carefully. When the moment was right, I called out for her to act. She touched Midoriya, and he began to slow down. As he landed safely, she pressed her fingers together, and we all touched down. However, I noticed she was feeling unwell from using her quirk too much. I rushed to Midoriya, checking if he was all right. He managed to confirm he could still move his left arm, and I urged him to hurry. But just then, a powerful gust of wind destroyed the buildings in front of us, likely caused by 𝗵𝗃𝗁. Present Mic's voice rang out, announcing that time was up. I froze, realizing the implications. Midoriya cried out in despair before losing consciousness. I fell to my knees, feeling like I had failed both him and 𝗬𝗏𝗁 once again. Earlier, in Battle Center C, I had been making quick work of the three-pointers, racking up points effortlessly. The test was going smoothly, and I was impressed by the various quirks I had seen. But then I noticed everyone running in panic. Turning around, I spotted the zero-pointer, a colossal machine that seemed out of place. As it swung its arm, debris flew toward a girl with unusual ear jacks. I dashed in front of her just in time, taking the brunt of the impact. My tracksuit was damaged, but I brushed it off. The girl looked at me, concerned yet astonished that I was okay. I reassured her that I was fine, but more debris was falling. I quickly grabbed her and led her to safety, repeating the process for others nearby. Once everyone was safe, I turned back to face the 0-pointer. It may not have been worth any points, but it posed a serious threat. As it advanced, I took a moment to gather my strength. I leaped onto a nearby building to avoid falling debris and then propelled myself toward the giant robot, ready to confront it head-on. I swung my fist at the target, and it shattered into tiny pieces. A shockwave from my punch rippled through numerous buildings and robots, affecting not just the center but also the surrounding areas. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 felt a twinge of concern, hoping no one had been hurt, except maybe Bakugo. As 𝗧𝗵𝗲 landed on the ground and turned around, the stunned expressions on everyone's faces were hard to miss. It was a sight 𝗧𝗵𝗲 wished could become routine. President Mike announced that time was up, and 𝗧𝗵𝗲 realized 10 minutes had already passed. It was time to find Genos and Izuku and see how they had fared on the test. As 𝗧𝗵𝗲 passed by the other examinees, they all stared in awe. The question lingered in 𝗧𝗵𝗲's mind: which battle center were Genos and Izuku in? Finally, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 located them after what felt like an eternity in the vast facility. Izuku sat quietly in a chair, staring at the floor, while Genos faced the wall, his hands resting against it. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 wondered what had happened. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 greeted them, but only Genos looked up. Izuku remained silent. Genos addressed 𝗧𝗵𝗲 as 𝗬𝗪, and 𝗧𝗵𝗲 apologized for being late, explaining they had gotten lost. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 inquired about the test results, specifically if Izuku had used his special ability. Genos confirmed that Izuku had indeed used it to take down a 0-pointer in one attack, but it had come at a cost. He had broken both legs and his right arm. Thankfully, Recovery Girl had been there to heal him. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 was impressed by Izuku's achievement but couldn't help but notice his brother's silence. Concerned, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 asked about their scores. Genos reported that he had earned 78 points, but Izuku had received none. Shocked, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 turned to Izuku, who was now in tears. Genos expressed his regret for failing them both. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 comforted Izuku, reassuring him that it was all right and that both he and Genos had done their best. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 believed something good would come from this experience. Izuku wiped his tears and managed to smile, while Genos nodded, though still looking upset. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 encouraged them to head home together. As they walked, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 overheard other students discussing their performance. They were impressed by the punch thrown by the taller green-haired guy and speculated about his strength compared to All Might. They also marveled at how Genos had easily taken down most of the robots, while Izuku had taken out a 0-pointer with a single blow. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 felt a sense of pride, realizing their impact was greater than they had thought. 2 weeks later, at the Midoriya household, Izuku smiled at the fish he held in his chopsticks, while 𝗧𝗵𝗲 continued eating, oblivious to his brother's unusual behavior. Their mother, 𝗵𝗃𝗁, tried to snap Izuku out of his daze, calling his name. When he didn't respond, she turned to 𝗧𝗵𝗲 for help. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 poked Izuku gently with his chopsticks, teasing him about the fish not smiling back. Izuku snapped out of it, apologizing for spacing out. As they cleaned up after dinner, Izuku reflected on their exam results. He felt disheartened by his 0 in the mock battle while 𝗧𝗵𝗲 had scored 98, a new record. He hadn't been able to reach All Might since the exam. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 noticed Izuku's troubled expression and encouraged him not to dwell on the negatives. He reminded Izuku that his efforts would lead to something good. 𝗵𝗃𝗁 chimed in, expressing her pride in Izuku, which brought a smile to his face. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 affirmed his support, stating that they were a team and if Izuku wasn't accepted, he wouldn't want to go either. Just then, they heard a knock at the door. 𝗵𝗃𝗁 answered to find Genos standing there with a large backpack. He greeted her politely and explained that he needed a place to stay due to his lab being occupied for Hero Association business. He offered to pay rent and help with housework, which surprised the Midoriya family. They whispered among themselves, considering Genos's request. 𝗵𝗃 noted that his contribution could help with bills, especially since her work hours were increasing. After some discussion, they agreed to let him stay, and 𝗵𝗃 showed him to his new room. While 𝗬/N and Izuku played video games on the couch, 𝗕𝗏 settled in. 𝗬/N reflected on how they had kept 𝗬𝗵𝗃 secret, wanting him to remain the symbol of peace. Just then, 𝗵𝗃 stumbled into the room, holding a letter marked with UA. She excitedly announced that their test results had arrived. 𝗬/N helped his mother to her feet and grabbed the letter. 𝗕𝗏 approached them, having heard the commotion. He asked if everything was all right, and Izuku confirmed that their test results had arrived. 𝗕𝗏 mentioned that he needed to check if his results were sent to Dr. Casino and would return shortly. 𝗬/N agreed, and later, the brothers found themselves in their room, staring at the unopened letter in front of them. 𝗬/N looked at Izuku, who returned his gaze with a bland but worried expression. 𝗬/N suggested that Izuku do the honors, and Izuku nodded, taking a deep breath before ripping the letter in half. A circular device emerged from it, leaving both brothers confused. Suddenly, a hologram projected All Might in his buff form, wearing a suit in a setting reminiscent of a game show. All Might greeted them enthusiastically, announcing that he was now a projection. Izuku was taken aback, while 𝗬/N expressed his surprise at the letter's origin. All Might continued, explaining that he hadn't come to the city just to fight villains. He was the newest faculty member at UA. Izuku was astonished, and 𝗬/N was equally intrigued. All Might then addressed 𝗬/N directly, congratulating him on passing the written exam and achieving an impressive score of 179 combat points due to the shockwave from his punch. He reassured them that no one was harmed, though he suggested 𝗬/N could have been more careful. 𝗬/N felt embarrassed as Izuku chuckled. All Might added that when combining combat points with rescue points, 𝗬/N had a total of 249 points. The brothers exchanged surprised glances. All Might then turned his attention to Izuku, acknowledging that while he had received 0 points on the practical exam, there were other factors to consider. He teased a surprise, revealing a short clip for their viewing pleasure. The screen displayed Ochako, the girl who had prevented Izuku from falling, speaking to present Mike. She described Izuku, noting his messy hair and freckles, and expressed her concern about his lack of points, suggesting it was unfair for someone who had taken down a huge villain to end up with none. 𝗬/N recognized her words as a compliment to his little brother, and he felt a sense of pride. Ochako insisted on giving Izuku some of her points, emphasizing that he had saved her and she wanted to repay him. All Might returned, pausing the video to explain that the practical exam was not graded solely on combat. He highlighted the importance of actions that inspire others, which is why he was there. The video resumed, showing present Mike reassuring Ochako that Izuku was doing well on his own. All Might then revealed the rescue points awarded. Izuku Midoriya had 60, 𝗬/N Midoriya had 70, 𝗕𝗏 had 50, and Ochako Uraraka had all 4 had passed the exam. Izuku was in shock, while 𝗬/N was elated. All Might extended his hand, declaring that they were now part of the Hero Academia. The hologram turned off, and the brothers faced each other, Izuku with tears of joy and 𝗬/N beaming with happiness. They jumped from their chairs and embraced, singing in celebration. Their cheers echoed through the house, prompting 𝗵𝗃 and 𝗕𝗏 to enter the room. 𝗵𝗃 was met with Izuku's joyful hug, which 𝗬/N joined carefully. Izuku excitedly announced that they had been accepted into UA and were going to be heroes. 𝗵𝗃 began to cry tears of joy, embracing her sons tightly. 𝗬/N called 𝗕𝗏 over to join the celebration, and the 3 of them cheered together, their excitement filling the air. 𝗬/N rushed out the door, shouting at the top of his lungs that the Midoriya brothers were going to UA. He reflected on the support they received, acknowledging that their lives had changed completely. Izuku shared his thoughts, expressing their dreams of enrolling in the high school they had always wanted. In a separate scene at UA's viewing room, teachers discussed the results of the exam, noting the exceptional performance of the top student. He scored the highest points in both rescue and villain categories. Teacher C noted his impressive abilities, stating that every robot he struck was instantly incapacitated, Teacher B remarked that he primarily targeted the higher point robots, allowing others a chance to succeed and clearing the field of threats. Teacher A expressed amazement at his strength, mentioning that he demolished the zero-pointer with a single blow, creating a shockwave that resonated across the other battle centers, all without appearing to exert himself. Teacher B pointed out that the student in 11th place had no villain points at all. Teacher C added that while he wasn't the first UA hopeful to take down that giant robot, it had been a long time since someone had done so with such ease, especially twice in one day. Teacher D raised a concern about the toll it took on his body, suggesting that it seemed unaccustomed to his quirk. One teacher observed the screens displaying Izuku and 𝗬𝗏 with keen interest. At 𝗕𝗁𝗏 Municipal Beach Park, Izuku reflected on the night after he received their UA acceptance letter, when 𝗬𝗏 finally contacted them again. 𝗬𝗏 was racing with Izuku on his back, with 𝗕𝗏𝗁 trailing behind. They arrived at the beach to find All Might in his slimmer form. Izuku greeted him, but 𝗬𝗏 quickly covered his mouth to prevent him from calling out the name of the number 1 hero, gesturing towards a couple nearby. 𝗬𝗏 reminded Izuku to keep his voice down. All Might chuckled as 𝗬𝗏 removed his hand, thanking him for maintaining his cover and congratulating the three on their acceptance. Izuku expressed his gratitude, acknowledging that he couldn't have achieved this without the support of 𝗬𝗏 and 𝗕𝗏𝗁. 𝗬𝗏 affectionately ruffled his brother's hair, sharing a laugh, while 𝗕𝗏𝗁 stated it was his honor to assist as a friend. All Might mentioned that he hadn't informed anyone at UA about training them, which surprised the trio. To 𝗕𝗏𝗁, it made sense, considering Izuku had one for all. The fewer people who knew, the safer it was for everyone involved. All Might reassured them that he hadn't influenced their acceptance, they earned their places through their own efforts. 𝗬𝗏 expressed appreciation for the clarification, while 𝗕𝗏𝗁 acknowledged his own hard work in securing his spot at UA and being 𝗬𝗏's disciple. Izuku suddenly recalled All Might's holographic message from UA, excitement lighting up his face as he spoke about All Might becoming a teacher there. He wondered about the unexpected visit, given that All Might's agency was located in Minato, Tokyo. All Might humorously noted that it was getting a bit creepy. Izuku fell silent, feeling a bit embarrassed. All Might explained that the school had requested he keep his new role under wraps until an official announcement was made. He revealed that it was fortuitous timing, as he was searching for a successor to inherit one for all. Izuku felt a pang of disappointment, realizing that All Might had been looking for someone with a quirk to take on the mantle. He glanced at his hand, recalling the pain he endured after using one for all for the first time, expressing his concerns about his inability to control it. 𝗕𝗏𝗁 reassured him that with time, he would learn to master his abilities, just as he had with his cybernetics and enhanced strength. All Might agreed, comparing the process of mastering a quirk to a baby learning to walk. 𝗬𝗏 looked puzzled but then frowned at All Might, questioning whether he had anticipated the risk of injury without warning them. All Might sheepishly admitted that they were pressed for time. While Izuku and 𝗕𝗏𝗁 were surprised, 𝗬𝗏 face-bombed in disbelief. All Might emphasized that it turned out well, and now they understood what they were dealing with. He picked up a can from the sand, demonstrating how, with training, Izuku would learn to control his quirk, adjusting his power output as needed. 𝗬𝗏 brightened at the thought, likening it to his own journey of learning to manage his strength to avoid destruction, though he acknowledged it was still challenging at times. Izuku sought clarification, asking if he simply needed control. All Might affirmed that Izuku was currently overflowing with energy, but with training he would learn to manage it better. Transforming into his muscular form, All Might crushed the can effortlessly, illustrating his point. Nearby, a couple recognized All Might and 𝗬𝗏, expressing their astonishment. 𝗬𝗏 shot All Might a look, acknowledging the slip in his cover. All Might suggested they make a quick exit, prompting Izuku to hop onto 𝗬𝗏's back as they all dashed away at incredible speed. As they raced through the streets, All Might reflected on the legacy he was passing on, noting that while Izuku's flame was small now, it would grow into a blazing inferno with time and training. He believed that with 𝗬𝗏 by his side, Izuku would eventually surpass him, leading to his own retirement once his mission was complete. 𝗬/N called out to All Might, inquiring about their destination. All Might replied that they were heading somewhere deserted. At the Hero Association headquarters, a meeting was underway at a long table filled with board members discussing recent monster attacks and the emergence of a potential terrorist group. One male member reported that this was the 12th demon-level monster they had encountered, suggesting that each monster's defeat seemed to alert someone. A female member expressed concern that they lacked the right heroes for such situations. Most of the S-class heroes were either too far away or occupied with other pressing issues to address the current crisis. One male member noted that some of the formidable monsters seemed to be linked to the House of Evolution. Another member expressed frustration over Blast's absence, questioning how he remained tied with All Might as the #1 hero when no one had seen him in months. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 listened intently, aware that his colleagues spoke the truth. Many of the stronger monsters were indeed affiliated with the House of Evolution, and the S-class heroes were preoccupied with larger threats. The situation was dire, especially with All Might's declining strength. It was only a matter of time before they lost the symbol of peace. Thankfully, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 had a plan, though he wondered if the others would support him. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 addressed the group, acknowledging the difficulty of their circumstances. He believed he had a solution to their predicament. As he presented 4 files, interest peaked in the room. He laid the files on the table, revealing holograms of 4 young faces. He explained that with the increasing number of monsters and villains and the limited number of heroes, they needed assistance from those with exceptional abilities. After conducting research, he had identified these 4 individuals. One male member questioned the wisdom of relying on such young individuals, expressing concern about the potential uproar it could cause. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 clarified that they would not be made pros immediately, but they could be permitted to use their powers without a license if necessary. The members began to discuss the idea, and one female member pointed out that the green-haired boy had previously defeated a dragon-level monster with a single punch. Another member recognized a cyborg among the group, recalling how he had been treated after a cyborg attack on a village. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 felt a sense of hope as the conversation continued. He sensed that when UA began, he and a few lawyers would need to visit the school. At the Midoriya household, a few months after the entrance exam, 𝗬/N struggled with the red tie of their UA school uniform while Izuku packed his belongings. 𝗕𝗏𝗄, having finished his preparations, approached 𝗬/N to assist with the tie, quickly tying it perfectly. 𝗬/N appreciated having 𝗕𝗏𝗄 as a disciple, making these tasks much easier. After thanking him, 𝗬/N double-checked their book bag to ensure everything was in order. As they prepared to leave, their mother, 𝗵𝗃, checked on them. She asked if they were ready, and 𝗬/N and Izuku confirmed they were. 𝗵𝗃 expressed her pride in Izuku, which brought a smile to his face as they headed out the door. 𝗬/N followed Izuku and 𝗕𝗏𝗄 to UA, excited about the next step toward their dream of becoming heroes. At UA High, Izuku reflected on the acceptance rate that year, which remained low, with only 1 in 300 applicants gaining entry. They were divided into 2 classes of 24 students each. As the 3 teenagers navigated the halls, 𝗬/N admired the school's impressive design, remarking that it looked more like a private institution than the best hero school in Japan. Izuku wondered where Class 1A was located, and 𝗕𝗏𝗄 provided precise directions. Upon reaching the classroom door, 𝗬/N was taken aback by its size, questioning the need for such a large entrance. 𝗕𝗏𝗄 explained that some students and teachers had quirks that made them taller, necessitating a door that accommodated everyone. 𝗬/N noticed Izuku looking nervous and reassured him that there was no need to worry, suggesting that perhaps Bakugo was in a different class. As they entered the classroom, they found Bakugo lounging with his feet on the desk while a classmate, 𝗕𝗏𝗍𝗐, reprimanded him for his disrespectful behavior. Bakugo's dismissive attitude surprised 𝗬/N and Izuku, who exchanged glances of disbelief. 𝗍𝗐 attempted to introduce himself, but Bakugo's aggressive response indicated that trouble was brewing. 𝗬/N warned 𝗍𝗐 not to engage with Bakugo, as his words were often filled with threats and insults. The atmosphere in the classroom was tense, and the newcomers prepared for the challenges that lay ahead. Some looked surprised, while Mina appeared excited to see 𝗬/N. Most of the girls blushed at the sight of the elder Midoriya, and Bakugo wore an expression full of disdain. 𝗕𝗫𝗍𝗍 approached them, extending his hand in greeting. He introduced himself, but 𝗬/N and Izuku interrupted, with Izuku introducing himself and his brother, 𝗬/N, while Genos simply stated his name. Ida regarded Izuku with respect, recalling what he had observed during the entrance exam. He noted that both Midoriya brothers had recognized there was more to the practical exam than met the eye. Izuku looked puzzled, while Genos remained silent, and 𝗬/N, having forgotten their previous encounter, expressed his confusion. Ida continued, acknowledging that he had misjudged them, admitting that they were far superior students. 𝗬/N questioned if they had met before, leaving Ida flabbergasted. Genos reminded 𝗬/N that Ida was the one who had reprimanded them before the exam, which triggered 𝗬/N's memory. Ida was taken aback when Genos referred to 𝗬/N as his emissary, who was teaching him to become strong. Ida expressed disbelief, questioning how 𝗬/N's strength could be independent of a quirk. 𝗬/N's response surprised the class, revealing that he was quirkless while Izuku possessed a quirk. A girl with green hair, standing at 4 feet 2 inches, looked at 𝗬/N with disdain, questioning why he was even there if he lacked a quirk. She suggested he would be a nuisance to others and should leave. 𝗬/N, confused by her attitude, wondered if she was a teacher's child. The girl, angered, floated in a green glow, asserting her age and calling 𝗬/N a moron. A black-haired girl sighed at the scene, and suddenly, Ochako appeared, recognizing 𝗬/N, Izuku, and Genos. 𝗬/N smiled at her, recalling her kindness during the exam. Izuku blushed at her compliment about his punch, while 𝗬/N slyly teased his brother about his modesty. Bakugo, observing from a distance, frowned, recalling past events at their previous school. In a flashback, the Midoriya brothers and Bakugo stood near their teacher, who expressed disbelief that 3 students from their school were heading to UA. 𝗬/N proudly supported his brother, while Bakugo seethed with anger, feeling overshadowed. Later, Bakugo confronted Izuku, accusing him of cheating to pass the exam. Izuku, with newfound courage, explained that 𝗬/N had always believed in him and inspired him to pursue his dream of becoming a hero. Returning to the present, Bakugo's thoughts were filled with resentment as he plotted against the Midoriya brothers. Meanwhile, Ochako excitedly speculated about their day ahead, wondering about their teachers. A voice interrupted, dismissing her enthusiasm and warning that if anyone was there just to make friends, they should leave. The students turned to see a man in a yellow sleeping bag, who introduced himself as part of UA's hero course, emphasizing the importance of time and focus. Rational students would understand that. 𝗬/N looked at Izuku, who seemed just as clueless. 𝗬/N wondered if Izuku had any idea who the man was. Izuku shook his head, expressing uncertainty but noted that if the man was here, he must be some kind of pro. 𝗬/N observed the man's worn appearance and questioned what his deal was. The man then introduced himself. Aizawa stated that he was Shota Aizawa, their teacher. Everyone seemed surprised by this revelation, except for 𝗬/N, who maintained his usual bland expression. Aizawa reached into his sleeping bag and pulled out gym uniforms, holding them out and instructing everyone to put them on and head outside. Confused murmurs arose from the group, but Aizawa quickly directed 𝗬/N specifically, tossing him his gym uniform and instructing him to go to the principal's office. 𝗬/N raised an eyebrow in confusion, asking where the office was. Aizawa pointed outside, telling him to follow the signs. 𝗬/N shrugged and exited the room, the clothes draped over his arm. He waved to Izuku and Genos as he walked, saying he would see them soon. Izuku nodded, while Genos bowed respectfully. Aizawa noticed the remaining students standing around and snapped at them to get dressed and move. Everyone hurried to change, eager to avoid upsetting their teacher. After changing into the gym uniform in the bathroom, 𝗬/N walked through the school, following the signs to the principal's office. He wondered why he had been called so soon after class began. Upon arriving, he noticed the door was as large as those in the classrooms. He knocked and waited for a response. A voice instructed him to come in. 𝗬/N slid the door open and was greeted by 3 people in suits, 2 men and a woman, sitting behind a desk. To his surprise, the principal appeared to be a small creature resembling a white rat or a teddy bear. Nizu welcomed 𝗬/N, introducing himself as the principal of UA High. 𝗬/N greeted him, inquiring if he was busy. Nizu gestured for him to take a seat, mentioning that the individuals from the Hero Association were there for him. 𝗬/N was taken aback, wondering what they wanted. He sat down, and one of the men in suits approached him, extending his hand for a shake. The man introduced himself as 𝗧𝗵𝗵, the Minister Officer of Justice of the Hero Association. 𝗬/N shook his hand respectfully, unsure of the significance of the title. 𝗧𝗵𝗵 congratulated 𝗬/N on his acceptance to UA, complimenting his impressive performance on the exam and his rising popularity following certain events. 𝗬/N recalled the monster he had fought the day he met All Might and realized that someone must have recorded it, contributing to his newfound fame. 𝗧𝗵𝗵 continued, explaining that they had footage of 𝗬/N surviving an explosion during a monster attack months ago and defeating the creature responsible in one blow, just like he had done before. Such strength was rare, but they had also discovered that 𝗬/N was quirkless through his medical records. 𝗬/N felt a wave of anxiety, fearing they might be there to reprimand him for fighting monsters without a license. He hesitantly asked if he was in trouble. 𝗧𝗵𝗵 appeared surprised by the question but quickly reassured him with a chuckle, stating they were actually there to ask for his assistance. 𝗧𝗵𝗵 explained that monster attacks were increasing yearly, with many reaching high threat levels. Most heroes capable of handling such threats were either busy or too far away. Witnessing 𝗬/N defeat a dragon-level monster inspired them to seek his help. They were offering him a position on a new special hero team designed to tackle powerful threats. 𝗬/N was astonished, questioning if they were making him a pro and expressing concern about fairness to others. 𝗧𝗵𝗵 clarified that he and 3 others would not be pros but rather an emergency contact group. They would not have the same freedoms as pro heroes but would be excused from using their powers in emergencies. 𝗬/N considered the offer. Helping people was his goal, and the chance to face challenges while receiving support after graduation was appealing. He then asked if his little brother could also receive the same services if he joined. 𝗧𝗵𝗵 agreed, and 𝗬/N decided to accept the offer. Both 𝗧𝗵𝗵 and Nizu appeared pleased, while the other 2 individuals seemed surprised. 𝗧𝗵𝗵 informed 𝗬/N that they only needed him to sign some paperwork. As they opened their briefcases, 𝗬/N was greeted by a daunting stack of documents. Meanwhile, outside UA High, Class 1A was in shock upon hearing about a quirk assessment test. Chako was the first to voice her concern, expressing that they would miss orientation. Izuku remained unfazed, explaining that to reach the big leagues, they couldn't waste time on pointless ceremonies. The students gasped at his words, and Izuku continued, emphasizing that at UA, they were not bound by tradition and could run the class as he saw fit. He noted that they had taken standardized tests throughout their lives but had never been allowed to use their quirks in physical exams. The country was still trying to pretend everyone was equal by not allowing those with more power to excel. One day, the Ministry of Education would learn. Izuku pulled out a baseball, holding it in one hand. Normally, he would have the student who placed first in the entrance exam step up, but since 𝗬/N Midoriya was preoccupied in the office, he decided to change the location to Nizu's office. A male lawyer explained how the Hero Association would assist 𝗬/N with collateral damage and health insurance. 𝗬/N appeared overwhelmed as the lawyer and a woman discussed various details, having him sign numerous papers. In his thoughts, he wished for it all to end. Back at the quirk assessment test location, Izuku announced that he would have the student who ranked second go instead, Genos. Genos stepped up to Izuku, while Bakugo seethed with anger, realizing he hadn't placed first. Izuku looked at Genos as the teen cyborg stood before him. Izuku asked if fire was Genos' quirk, enhanced by his cybernetics. Genos confirmed this, and Izuku handed him the baseball, stepping aside for him to take the field. Izuku instructed 𝗕𝗏𝗄 to throw the ball using both his quirk and cybernetics, emphasizing that anything was allowed as long as he stayed within the circle. 𝗕𝗏𝗄 nodded and prepared to pitch. As he gripped the ball, energy whirred around him, and his arm glowed with the heat of his quirk. He threw the ball, propelling it with a beam of fire, and combined with his strength, it soared into the sky, becoming a small in the distance. Most of the class was impressed, except for Bakugo and a short green-haired girl. Izuku checked the distance on his phone and turned the screen to face the class, revealing the impressive distance of 3,549 meters. He reminded them that understanding their maximum capabilities was crucial for determining their potential as pro heroes. The class gasped in disbelief at the number. One male student expressed his astonishment, while Mina eagerly wanted her turn, excited about the opportunity to use their quirks freely. Izuku, however, silenced their enthusiasm with a stern look, reminding them that they had 3 years to become heroes and that it wouldn't be all fun and games. He warned that they would compete in 12 physical tests to gauge their potential, and those who came in last would be expelled immediately. Concern spread among the students, especially Izuku and 𝗕𝗏𝗄. 𝗕𝗏𝗄 pondered the implications of immediate expulsion, while Izuku worried about the daunting number of tests ahead of him. He realized he could only use one for all at either 0 or 100% and lacked control. Izuku asserted his authority, stating he would decide how the class would run. He warned that if anyone had a problem with that, they could leave right away. Izuku's anxiety grew as he contemplated the challenges ahead. Ochako protested, arguing that it was unfair to send anyone home on their first day. Izuku countered with the harsh realities of the world, referencing natural disasters, power-hungry villains, and catastrophic accidents. The class fell silent, recognizing the truth in his words. Izuku emphasized that the world was filled with unfairness and that it was a hero's job to combat it. He urged them to push themselves to their limits over the next 3 years, encouraging them to show that they belonged at UA. As Izuku prepared to start the tests, he welcomed them to UA's hero course. The students steeled themselves, determined to succeed. Lita, though disapproving of the harsh treatment, acknowledged UA's status as the top hero program. Bakugo grinned, ready to prove himself. Izuku blew the whistle, signaling the start of the competition. Meanwhile, 𝗕𝗏𝗄 wondered what was keeping 𝗬𝗏𝗃 so long in 𝗫𝗏's office. 𝗬𝗏𝗃 felt challenged like never before, wishing for the ordeal to end as the woman lawyer continued discussing Team Omega's priorities. In his thoughts, he hoped they would finish soon and wondered what Izuku and the others were doing. Outside UA, Izuku assessed his situation. He felt overwhelmed by the physical tests, struggling to keep up with his peers. He had performed better at some stations, but he was still far behind, especially compared to 𝗕𝗏𝗄 and 2 girls who seemed to be sisters, using their quirks to excel. Izuku realized he needed to find a way to improve his results. He had immense power but could only use it once, which would leave him exhausted. He needed control, so he recalled All Might's advice about harnessing one for all. In a flashback, All Might had encouraged Izuku to feel the power within him. 𝗬𝗏𝗃 and 𝗕𝗏𝗄 had looked confused, seeking clarification. All Might had asked Izuku about the rush he felt when using his power, prompting Izuku to reflect on his experience. He described it in various metaphors, leading to a humorous exchange with 𝗬𝗏𝗃 and All Might. All Might had found Izuku's metaphor amusing but encouraged him to adjust his approach, suggesting he lower the intensity or decrease the duration of his power usage. Keep focusing on that image and keeping the egg from exploding, all right. Izuku was determined to succeed. 𝗕𝗏𝗄 reminded him that they had 3 weeks until school started, which was plenty of time to manage his power output. 𝗬𝗏𝗃 smiled at Izuku, expressing his confidence in him. 𝗬𝗏𝗃 believed in Izuku's abilities, assuring him that he could do it. Izuku felt grateful for 𝗬𝗏𝗃's faith in him. In the present, Izuku concentrated on preventing the egg from exploding. He squeezed the hand grip machine and saw he managed 56 kilograms. Nearby, a guy with multiple tentacle-like objects pressed his machine and achieved 540 kilograms. 𝗕𝗏𝗄 surpassed them both with an impressive 976. 8 kilograms, a testament to Dr. Casino's enhancements. During the standing long jump, Izuku was the only one who landed in the sandbox. In the punching machine test, he wasn't last, but he was among the weaker participants. Finally, it was time for the ball throw. He felt nervous as his classmates used their quirks to throw the ball far. Kaken achieved 705. 2 meters, and the kind girl who had helped him earlier surpassed everyone with an infinity symbol. As the ball approached him, anxiety washed over him. 𝗓𝗄𝘁, noticing Izuku's apprehension, offered his help, but Izuku declined, wanting to prove he could do it on his own. He appreciated the gesture but felt it was important to rely on himself. With determination, he hoped to use 𝗏𝗏 effectively this time. In 𝗍𝗁's office, a male lawyer instructed 𝗧𝗏𝗵𝗃 to sign some papers. After signing, 𝗧𝗏𝗵𝗃 felt a wave of relief. 𝗧𝗏 informed him that he would receive his team license by the end of the day, along with a phone for communication. 𝗧𝗏𝗵𝗃 acknowledged the request, stating that he came to the school to be a hero, even if he was still in training. 𝗍𝗁 and 𝗧𝗏 were pleased, recognizing his potential. 𝗧𝗏𝗵𝗃 asked if he could leave, and 𝗍𝗁 handed him a note to deliver to Aizawa. After 𝗧𝗏𝗵𝗃 left, 𝗧𝗏 requested a moment alone with the two lawyers. Once they exited, 𝗧𝗏 expressed his gratitude to 𝗍𝗁 for allowing him to pursue the Team Omega plan. 𝗍𝗁 agreed, emphasizing the need for heroes, especially with the increasing threats and All Might's limited time. He believed 𝗧𝗏𝗵𝗃 would be a powerful ally. Outside UA, Izuku held the ball, ready to throw it. He knew he had to use 𝗏𝗏 in his right arm, even if it risked injury. 𝗓𝗄𝘁 watched him with concern. 𝗧𝗏𝗵𝗃 approached, hands in his pockets, and inquired about what was happening. 𝗓𝗄𝘁 explained that Aizawa was testing them, and the last place finisher would be expelled immediately. 𝗧𝗏𝗵𝗃 was taken aback by the harshness of the situation, especially since Izuku had been struggling. Bakugo, arms crossed, dismissed Izuku's efforts, calling him a quirkless loser. 𝗧𝗏𝗵𝗃 glared at Bakugo, warning him to watch his words. He defended Izuku, reminding Bakugo of his achievements during the entrance exam. Izuku recalled the encouragement he had received from his mother and All Might, as well as 𝗧𝗏𝗵𝗃's unwavering support. He resolved not to let them down. With determination, Izuku swung his arm to throw the ball, feeling the power of 𝗏𝗏 surge through him. However, the ball fell short of his expectations. The measuring device registered only 46 meters, causing gasps from the class. Izuku was confused, wondering what had gone wrong. Aizawa revealed that he had erased Izuku's quirk, leading to Izuku's shock as he recognized Aizawa as the Erasure hero, Eraserhead. The class was puzzled by Izuku's recognition, while 𝗓𝗄𝘁 quickly searched for information about Aizawa. "That's not what I was trying to do." Aizawa's scarf moved on its own, wrapping around Izuku and lifting him up. The class looked impressed by the sight while 𝗧𝗏𝗵𝗃 frowned at what he was seeing and hearing. Aizawa stated that no matter what Izuku's intentions were, he would be nothing more than a liability in battle. He compared Izuku's reckless passion to that of another overzealous hero who had saved 1,000 people and become a legend. However, Aizawa pointed out that even with such drive, Izuku was worthless if he could only throw a single punch before breaking down. He expressed his doubts about Izuku's potential to become a hero. Aizawa released Izuku, handed him another ball, and stepped back, instructing him to take his final throw and to hurry up. Izuku looked worried for a moment until he saw 𝗧𝗏𝗵𝗃 smiling at him and giving him a thumbs up. Taking a deep breath, he readied himself as the other students began to converse about his situation. Lita wondered if their teacher had given Izuku some advice, while Bakugo suggested that Aizawa probably told him to start packing. 𝗓𝗄𝘁 questioned Bakugo's insufferable attitude, and Yuga greeted Ochako, who seemed confused about his identity. Izuku focused on the ball, acknowledging Aizawa's correctness. He gripped it tightly, thinking about his single chance to succeed. Aizawa observed Izuku, analyzing his every move and contemplating whether he would foolishly use his quirk and forfeit the rest of the events or admit defeat and settle into last place. Meanwhile, Izuku wrestled with his inability to control his power but refused to give up. He considered the risks of letting the egg explode, realizing it might be his only shot at staying at UA. 𝗬𝗃 watched Izuku prepare to throw the ball, encouraging him silently. Unknown to everyone, All Might was observing from a distance, noticing that Izuku was about to make his throw. As Izuku's arm moved, he managed to channel One for All into his finger. He resolved to work harder than everyone else if he wanted to succeed, focusing on what he could do in that moment. With a shout, Izuku threw the ball, and everyone was taken by surprise, though 𝗬𝗃 wore a goofy smile. Despite breaking his finger, Izuku stood firm, feeling the pain but realizing it wasn't as bad as before. Aizawa looked impressed, checking his phone to see that the ball had been launched 705. 3 meters. Izuku smiled, curling his hand into a fist, and Aizawa acknowledged the young Midoriya's achievement. 𝗬𝗃 cheered for his brother, proud of his accomplishment, while All Might marveled at Izuku's newfound ability. The class was astonished by what they had witnessed. Izuku had thrown the ball over 700 meters using only his finger. 𝗬𝗃 beamed with pride, and Ochako noted that Izuku was finally showing his true power. However, Ida pointed out that Izuku's finger appeared to be broken, just like during the exam, and remarked on the oddity of his quirk. Bakugo was in shock, having never seen Izuku do something like this before. His mind raced with questions, each one fueling his anger. He recalled a conversation with Izuku about his brother's belief in him and his dream of becoming a hero. Bakugo's frustration boiled over, and he charged at Izuku, demanding to know how he had accomplished such a feat. Izuku gasped as his former friend approached, but before anything could escalate, 𝗬𝗃 intervened, holding Bakugo by the shoulder and looking annoyed. Bakugo groaned in pain, trying to free himself, and insulted 𝗬𝗃 in the process. The class was taken aback by 𝗬𝗃's swift actions, marveling at how he had moved so quickly. Aizawa stepped in, instructing Bakugo to stand down and telling 𝗬𝗃 to let him go. 𝗬𝗃 complied, releasing Bakugo, who stumbled and rubbed his shoulder. Aizawa glared at Bakugo, warning him to avoid provoking him further. It gives me serious dry eye. Class 1A felt the excitement in the air. Aizawa, looking at 𝗬𝗃, said it was time to get to the first station and prepare. 𝗬𝗃 nodded, noticing Izuku's broken finger and asking if he was okay. Izuku reassured him that he was fine, and 𝗬𝗃 complimented his impressive throw, glad to witness his brother's abilities. Izuku chuckled as he returned to the group, where Genos gave him a supportive pat on the back, while a concerned girl eyed his injury. 𝗬𝗃 reached the first station, the 50-meter run. Aizawa called for readiness, and 𝗬𝗃's expression shifted to one of seriousness. When Aizawa shouted, "Go!" 𝗬𝗃 took off, leaving a cloud of dust in his wake. Aizawa was stunned to see 𝗬𝗃's shoe prints deeply imprinted in the ground, while the rest of Class 1A, except for Genos, stood in awe. At the standing long jump, 𝗬𝗃 created a crater with his leap, a powerful gust of wind following him. At the weightlifting station, he effortlessly lifted the heaviest weights available. When it came to the hand grip machine, he casually squeezed it, causing the machine to break apart, yet 𝗬𝗃 remained unharmed, apologizing for the mishap. As he approached the ball throw station, Aizawa felt a knot of anxiety. He thought about how strong 𝗬𝗃 was, especially since he remained unaffected by Aizawa's quirk. The rest of the class shared nervous glances, except for Izuku and Genos, who were proud to see 𝗬𝗃's strength on display. 𝗬𝗃 pulled his arm back and threw the ball with incredible force, but it vanished before anyone could see where it went. Aizawa checked his phone, only to find an error message. Mina questioned the ball's whereabouts, while Ida speculated it might have left the school grounds. Genos, with a calculating gaze, revealed the truth. 𝗬𝗃 had thrown the ball so hard that it disintegrated. The class gasped in disbelief, except for Izuku and Genos, who understood the magnitude of 𝗬𝗃's power. 𝗬𝗃 turned to Aizawa, asking what was next. Aizawa, still in shock, instructed him to wait with the rest of the class. 𝗬𝗃 remembered the note from Principal Nizu and handed it to Aizawa, who thanked him before returning to his classmates. Standing next to Izuku and Genos, both smiled at him, with Izuku praising his brother's performance. Meanwhile, All Might watched in astonishment, unable to comprehend what he had just witnessed. He thought about how 𝗬𝗏𝗵 had not only shattered UA's records but also those set by professional heroes. Bakugo, still in shock, reflected on how he had underestimated the Midoriya brothers, feeling anger replace his surprise. Aizawa cleared his throat and faced the class, regaining his composure. He announced it was time to reveal their results, ranking them from best to worst. Izuku felt dread at the thought of being expelled, but 𝗬𝗏𝗵 reassured him that everything would be okay. When the results were displayed, 𝗬𝗏𝗵 topped the list, followed by Tatsumaki, Genos, and others, while Izuku found himself at the bottom. Just as despair set in, Aizawa revealed that no one was going home, explaining it had been a ruse to motivate them. The class erupted in relief, with 𝗬𝗏𝗵 remaining calm as a girl with a ponytail expressed her surprise at their reactions. Everyone began to talk, relieved that they were all staying. Aizawa concluded the day, instructing them to pick up a syllabus and read it before the next morning. He handed notes to Tatsumaki, Fubuki, and Genos, then gave Izuku a note, advising him to get his injury treated. 𝗬𝗏𝗵 encouraged Izuku to heal his finger and promised to help him maximize his quirk. Izuku chuckled, jokingly asking if 𝗬𝗏𝗵 had a mind-reading ability, to which 𝗬𝗏𝗵 simply replied no. Aizawa walked back to the building until he stopped as All Might spoke to him. All Might mentioned that Aizawa's recent actions were questionable. Aizawa, with his tired eyes, faced All Might, appearing indifferent. All Might pointed out that Aizawa was known for being strict, having expelled an entire class of freshmen the previous year. He noted that Aizawa must see potential in young Midoriya, just as he did. Aizawa remained unchanged and asked what All Might was getting at, implying that it sounded like All Might had been supporting Midoriya all along. All Might looked a bit embarrassed, searching for words. Aizawa then remarked that it was early for All Might to be showing favoritism. He acknowledged that Midoriya had some potential, but he expressed concern about the risks of letting a student dream of something unattainable. He also mentioned that he feared facing Midoriya's brother if he were to expel him. All Might agreed, observing Aizawa leave, aware that the school year would be interesting. He noted that Aizawa, in his own way, was a kind man, but they were bound to have some conflicts. Time passed, and the scene shifted to the UA high school grounds, where Izuku appeared exhausted. Both brothers were waiting for Genos to return from the office, with Izuku looking like he needed a nap. 𝗬𝗏𝗵 examined his brother's healed finger, expressing disbelief that Izuku could be so tired from healing it. Just then, Ida approached, and 𝗬𝗏𝗵 greeted him, though he stumbled over Ida's name. Ida asked about Izuku's finger, which was fully healed thanks to Recovery Girl. Izuku expressed relief but then admitted he felt very tired. 𝗬𝗏𝗵 raised an eyebrow at Recovery Girl, who explained that healing took energy and warned Izuku to be cautious with injuries, as excessive healing could be dangerous. Izuku panicked at the thought, while 𝗬𝗏𝗵 maintained his usual demeanor. Ida looked around, noting Genos was still at the office. 𝗬𝗏𝗵 explained that Genos was likely busy with paperwork from the Hero Association. Both Ida and Izuku were surprised to hear about the Hero Association. 𝗬𝗏𝗵 clarified that they had wanted him to join something, though he couldn't recall the details. Izuku gave 𝗬𝗏𝗵 a skeptical look, and Genos soon appeared, ready to leave. 𝗬𝗏𝗵 asked how it went, and Genos reported that it went extremely well. They began walking home, and Izuku initiated a conversation about the day. Ida expressed concern about Aizawa's teaching methods but trusted the school's judgment. 𝗬𝗏𝗵 noted that every teacher had their own style. Suddenly, Ochako called out to them as she ran up. Izuku blushed at her presence, while 𝗬𝗏𝗵 smiled. Ochako asked if they were heading to the station, and 𝗬𝗏𝗵 invited her to join them. Izuku was taken aback, while Ochako agreed. As she reached them, Ida recognized her as the Infinity Girl. 𝗬𝗏𝗵 was confused by the nickname, and Genos explained that her quirk allowed her to throw a ball into space, earning her that title. 𝗬𝗏𝗵 was impressed and introduced himself, while Ochako recognized the others. She then asked Izuku if he was Deku, to which 𝗬𝗏𝗵 corrected her, explaining that it was a nickname given by Bakugo that meant worthless. 𝗬𝗂𝗁 apologized, and 𝗬𝗏 reassured her it was fine. 𝗬𝗂𝗁 giggled, and when she complimented the name Deku, Izuku was overwhelmed with emotion, realizing it could be a great hero name. 𝗕𝗏𝗁 and 𝗳𝗏 were surprised by Izuku's acceptance of the nickname, while 𝗬𝗏𝗁 smiled, knowing it meant a lot to his brother. Izuku expressed his excitement, feeling like his world had changed. 𝗬𝗂𝗁 then asked 𝗬𝗏𝗁 about his delay in the office. 𝗬𝗏𝗁 explained that the Hero Association wanted him to join a team, and 𝗕𝗏𝗁 elaborated that they were now part of a unit called Team Omega. The others were confused, and Izuku asked what Team Omega was. 𝗕𝗏𝗁 explained that it was a new unit meant for extreme situations, like monster or villain attacks. The trio was shocked to learn that they were considered a team, though 𝗕𝗏𝗁 clarified that they could only act if a high-ranking hero was unavailable. In other words, they were essentially an emergency solution. The three calmed down after hearing that and looked excited. 𝗬𝗂𝗁 thought it sounded cool, while 𝗳𝗏 agreed, noting it wasn't surprising given their results that day. Izuku expressed his surprise at 𝗬𝗏𝗁 being chosen for it, considering he barely paid attention to anything outside of bargain sales. 𝗬𝗏𝗁 shot his brother an annoyed look, prompting laughter from the others as they headed to the station to rest and prepare for whatever came next. Later, near the Midoriya household, 𝗬𝗏𝗁, Izuku, and 𝗕𝗏𝗁 walked to the building, chatting after parting ways with 𝗬𝗂𝗁 and 𝗳𝗏. Izuku mentioned surviving his first day at UA, even if he felt he had failed. 𝗬𝗏𝗁 reassured him that this just meant he would show everyone what he could do when he reached the top. 𝗕𝗏𝗁 added that they had plenty of time to help him master one for all before graduation. Izuku smiled, grateful for their support. Suddenly, they heard a drone fly by and looked up to see the initials of the Hero Association on it as it landed in front of them, depositing a small box before leaving. 𝗬𝗏𝗁 wondered what it was, and 𝗕𝗏𝗁 opened the box to reveal two high-tech phones. 𝗬𝗏𝗁 admired the fancy device, and 𝗕𝗏𝗁 explained that they would serve as their communication method with the Hero Association whenever needed. The boys put their new phones in their pockets and headed home to prepare for the rest of the school year. The next day at UA, Izuku reflected on the Hero course curriculum, which included core classes like English. In present mixed class, the hero stood in front of a board with 4 sentences written on it, asking his class which one contained a mistake. Most of the class looked bored, especially 𝗬𝗏𝗁, who struggled to stay awake. 𝗕𝗏𝗁 and Izuku were among the few paying attention, quickly arriving at the answer in their minds. Present Mike used his quirk to keep some students awake, urging them to focus on grammar rules. The ponytail girl raised her hand, and Present Mike acknowledged her. In the lunchroom, 𝗬𝗏𝗁 noted that they could buy tasty food at a reasonable price. The 5 teenagers sat together at a table, with 𝗬𝗏𝗁 and 𝗬𝗂𝗁 eating while 𝗕𝗏𝗁 and 𝗳𝗏 faced the cooking hero, Lunch Rush, who Izuku admired. Lunch Rush remarked that white rice was the perfect comfort food, and 𝗬𝗏𝗁 agreed, calling it the best. Later, it was finally time for hero basic training. The door slid open as All Might entered dramatically, earning gasps from the class. He welcomed them to the most important class at UA High, describing it as myheroacademia 101, where they would learn the basics of being a pro and fighting for good. Today's lesson would be intense. All Might revealed a plaque with the word "fight" on it, prompting excitement from the class. He explained that one of the keys to being a hero was looking good and showcased cases filled with costumes designed based on their quirk registration forms. The class cheered and rushed to get suited up, eager to meet him at Training Ground Beta. At the training ground, everyone was in their hero costumes. 𝗕𝗏𝗁, however, wore only breathes, revealing his cyborg body. All Might praised their costumes, stating that clothes make the pros and encouraging them to embrace their new identities as heroes in training. He expressed his excitement and readiness to begin their training. In the shadows, 𝗬𝗏𝗁 waited for Izuku, who was already in his costume. He asked if his brother was ready, and Izuku enthusiastically affirmed that they were prepared for action. 3 weeks before the first day at UA, Izuku reflected on the clothing allowance process. Before enrolling, they submitted quirk registration forms, which included physical measurements and desired costume designs to a designated clothing company. 𝗬𝗃 noted that this information allowed for the creation of state-of-the-art costumes. Izuku sat on the couch with papers in hand while 𝗕𝗏𝗄 swept the floor, wearing a pink apron. Noticing Izuku's worry, 𝗕𝗏𝗄 inquired if everything was all right. Izuku sighed, explaining that he needed to go to City Hall to get his registration form for the clothing allowance but was already registered as having no quirk. 𝗕𝗏𝗄 reassured him that updating his quirk registration was simpler than he thought. He explained that many quirk users discover new aspects of their abilities over time and encouraged Izuku to fill out the appropriate form at City Hall to update his information. Izuku was surprised by how easy it sounded. Just then, 𝗬𝗃 walked in carrying grocery bags, his blue tracksuit ripped in multiple places, as if he had been through a battle. Izuku and 𝗕𝗏𝗄 looked at 𝗬𝗃 with shock. Izuku expressed disbelief at 𝗬𝗃's appearance, noticing the tattered outfit. 𝗬𝗃 explained that a monster had attacked while returning from a bargain sale. Izuku couldn't believe it, thinking about how monster attacks seemed to be increasing lately. Before 𝗬𝗃 could elaborate, Inko entered the room, her sharp motherly gaze immediately locking onto her eldest son. She let out an exasperated sigh, commenting on the second tracksuit 𝗬𝗃 had ruined that month and urging him to stop destroying them. 𝗬𝗃 chuckled nervously and apologized, placing the shopping bags on the counter. Inko then motioned for 𝗬𝗃 to come closer and whispered instructions for him to drop off an order for Izuku at Masaru Tenzo's shop, also asking him to see if Tenzo could fix the damaged tracksuit. 𝗬𝗃 agreed and quickly changed clothes before heading out with the shredded tracksuit under his arm and the order in hand. As 𝗬𝗃 walked through the city, people began to take notice. He was well known, especially after taking down a dragon-level monster the previous year. Some civilians recognized him and commented on his past heroics, while a group of girls admired his looks. Oblivious to the attention, 𝗬𝗃 continued on his way to Tenzo's tailor shop. Upon entering the small shop, 𝗬𝗃 noticed a man in a black jacket leaving with a smug smile. Masaru Tenzo, the trusted tailor of the Midoriya family, greeted 𝗬𝗃 with a welcoming smile. 𝗬𝗃 placed the order slip and his damaged tracksuit on the counter, explaining that his mother had sent him to pick something up for Izuku. Tenzo chuckled as he examined the tracksuit, amused by 𝗬𝗃's tendency to get into scrapes on his way home. He assured 𝗬𝗃 that he would patch it up for free. 𝗬𝗃 thanked him and handed over the order slip, which Tenzo read before beginning to work on the tracksuit. As Tenzo patched up the suit, he congratulated 𝗬𝗃 on his brother's acceptance into UA. 𝗬𝗃 grinned, proud of Izuku's accomplishment. When Tenzo asked if 𝗬𝗃 had decided on a hero suit yet, 𝗬𝗃 hesitated, admitting he wasn't sure what he wanted. Tenzo, recalling his past as a designer for the Hero Association, offered to help create a suit that would be durable. 𝗬𝗃 browsed through Tenzo's notebook filled with designs, noting some were impressive while others were less appealing. He promised to think about it. The next day, 𝗬𝗃 returned to pick up his newly repaired tracksuit. Tenzo handed it to him, declaring it good as new and mentioning that Izuku's order would be ready by the next day. Just then, they heard knocking, and both turned to see the same man from the previous day standing at the door. The man, with a threatening demeanor, made it clear that he intended to collect payment from Tenzo. 𝗬𝗃 looked confused, while Tenzo's expression darkened as he explained that the shop was closing down due to the 𝗕𝗏𝗕 loan group, a gang that had caused many businesses to go bankrupt. 𝗬𝗃 was shocked to hear this. Tenzo had always been a friend to his family, providing them with quality clothing. The thought of losing the shop to greedy criminals angered 𝗬𝗃. He asked Tenzo where the gang was located, expressing his longing to help retrieve the shop's deed. Tenzo warned him against it, citing the potential danger and legal trouble. However, 𝗬𝗃 remained resolute, believing that helping Tenzo was the right thing to do, even without a hero license. Tenzo, seeing 𝗬𝗃's determination, reluctantly agreed to provide directions to the gang's location. After receiving the directions, 𝗬𝗃 left the shop, Tenzo watching him with a mix of concern and admiration for the young man's spirit. 𝗬𝗃 arrived at the apartment complex where the lone gang was based, surprised by its shabby appearance. He began his search for the right door, encountering various odd residents along the way. After several unsuccessful attempts, he finally knocked on a door where two twins in matching tracksuits answered, one of them recognizing 𝗕/𝗵 immediately. 𝗕/𝗵 was known as the kid who defeated a monster with a single punch. As he made his way up the stairs, he noticed the two men yelling at him, seemingly caught off guard. 𝗕/𝗵 wondered if they were unaware of the monster's whereabouts. When he turned to look back at them, one of them shouted about a reward, which confused him. He learned that there was indeed a reward, but before he could process it, the two men lunged at him, yelling loudly. He swiftly punched both of them, leaving them incapacitated on the ground. Dragging them along, he continued upstairs. Upon knocking on another door, he was immediately attacked by a man who recognized him as a threat. 𝗕/𝗵 hoped that dealing with criminals wouldn't become a regular occurrence. He feared his mother would be furious if she found out. Entering the dimly lit apartment, he noticed a man in a blue suit and shades sitting in a red chair, one leg crossed over the other. The man, the boss of the 𝗕𝗓𝗕𝗓 loan group, looked different from what 𝗕/𝗵 had expected. 𝗕/𝗵 explained that he had come to retrieve the store papers that belonged to Mr. Tenzo, who had been a significant help to his family for years. The boss appeared ready to fight, dismissing 𝗕/𝗵's confidence as mere bravado. He questioned whether brute force could solve problems, but 𝗕/𝗵 was prepared. Thanks to All Might's training, he had studied laws and strategies. 𝗕/𝗵 pointed out that Mr. Tenzo's debt had already been paid according to legal interest percentages. The boss seemed surprised as 𝗕/𝗵 continued to speak, recalling details that would impress his friend Izuku. When 𝗕/𝗵 mentioned that any amount exceeding the legitimate interest was considered overpayment, the boss transformed, his skin turning pink and his clothes disintegrating, revealing his monstrous form. The boss, now enraged, declared that he wouldn't let 𝗕/𝗵 ruin his hard work. 𝗕/𝗵 couldn't help but comment on the boss's appearance, and the monster retaliated by pulling out a 𝗕𝗏𝗏𝗏. As the boss began to attack, 𝗕/𝗵 skillfully dodged, determined not to damage his tracksuit. The boss then spewed eggs from his mouth, which was quite unpleasant. 𝗕/𝗵 slid back to evade the attack, while the boss boasted about his rank as a bounty. 𝗕/𝗵 sighed, hoping his mother wouldn't find out about his encounter with another monster. He was solely focused on retrieving the papers. With a quick rush, he punched the boss, who collapsed to the floor, hurt. 𝗕/𝗵 dusted off his hands and began searching the office for the documents. Meanwhile, the landlady opened her door and was shocked to see her tenants bruised and restrained as the police arrested them. Furious, she approached an officer to demand an explanation. The officer informed her that they had received a call about illegal activities involving these men and the fish monster. The landlady was outraged, worried about her own losses. Back at Mr. Tenzo's shop, 𝗕/𝗵 returned, and the man looked surprised to see him. 𝗕/𝗵 handed over the papers, and Mr. Tenzo examined them in disbelief. As 𝗕/𝗵 began to leave, he waved goodbye, and the old tailor smiled, recognizing 𝗕/𝗵 as a true hero who had helped him. The next day at the Midoriya household, 𝗕/𝗵 and Izuku were engrossed in video games, with Izuku summarizing the previous day's events. He expressed sympathy for the men who had faced 𝗕/𝗵, feeling it was unfortunate for them. Genos, who had been cleaning, chimed in, viewing 𝗕/𝗵's actions as a remarkable opportunity to showcase his heroism even before attending UA. Suddenly, there was a knock at the front door, and Inko set down her cup of tea to answer it. She opened the door to find Mr. Tenzo, who was smiling and carrying 2 bags. He greeted her warmly and mentioned he had brought something for 𝗕/𝗵 as well. Both brothers looked up in curiosity as Tenzo entered, and 𝗕/𝗵 paused the game. Tenzo revealed that he had come to deliver their suits before his retirement. The family was shocked, and Tenzo explained that he had been in the business for a long time and was ready for a well-deserved break. He presented Izuku with a costume that his mother had ordered, and Izuku gazed at it in awe. Inko admitted to peeking at Izuku's notebook, which had led to her ordering the suit. Tenzo then handed 𝗬𝗧 an A bag containing a yellow jumpsuit with a white cape, red gloves, and boots. He explained that it was made from a special family material that was incredibly strong and durable. 𝗬𝗧 admired the suit, feeling a sense of gratitude, and both brothers bowed to Tenzo in respect, thanking him for his generosity. As Tenzo left, he wished them the best of luck at UA. Inko turned to her sons, feeling a wave of shame wash over her. She expressed her regret for her past words to Izuku, recalling the day they learned he was quirkless and how she had unintentionally made him feel abandoned. She acknowledged 𝗬𝗧's unwavering support for his brother, realizing how much they had both grown. You persevered and kept chasing your dream like true champions. Inko faced Izuku, looking determined. She expressed her apologies and promised to support him and his brother with everything she had from that moment on. The brothers smiled at their mother and hugged her, happy to hear those words. After letting go, 𝗬𝗧 looked at Izuku and asked if he wanted to try on his costume. Izuku eagerly agreed. Present day, at UA High, training ground Beta, both brothers walked towards their class in their hero suits, 𝗬𝗧 maintaining his usual neutral expression while only Izuku's eyes were visible. Ochako approached them in her hero suit, and Izuku felt a wave of nervousness wash over him at the sight of her. She greeted them enthusiastically, complimenting their costumes while Izuku stammered her name. Ochako mentioned that she should have specified her preferences for her bodysuit, which felt a bit too tight for her liking. As Izuku stared, a short boy with grape-like orbs on his head gave a thumbs up after looking at Ochako, which made 𝗬𝗧 intervene. He warned the boy to keep his eyes to himself, and the boy nodded, quickly running away, relieved to escape 𝗬𝗧's intense glare. The Midoriya brothers made their way to class, where All Might noticed the ears on Izuku's costume resembled his own hair. He looked away, growling under his breath about Izuku's obviousness. All Might then announced that it was time for combat training. A figure in a cool suit raised his hand, and Izuku recognized him as Iida. 𝗬𝗧 commented on Iida's impressive costume, and Iida explained that they would be using the fake city from their entrance exam for urban battles. All Might clarified that while many villain encounters happen outside, the most cunning criminals often operate indoors. Izuku recalled the slime villain, the memory still vivid in his mind. All Might continued, emphasizing that the best training comes from real battlefield experiences. He explained that they would be split into teams of heroes and villains for 2-on-2 indoor battles. A frog girl questioned the advanced nature of the exercise, but All Might insisted that the best training comes from real situations. He warned them that they couldn't just punch robots this time, they would be dealing with actual people. The class erupted with questions, and All Might struggled to regain their attention. He pulled out a script, reading from it, which confused some students, including Izuku and 𝗬𝗧. He explained that the villains had hidden a nuclear missile in their hideout, and the heroes needed to either capture the villains or recover the weapon. 𝗬𝗧 remarked that it sounded like a plot from a classic action movie. All Might then announced that they would choose teams by drawing lots. Iida suggested there might be a better way, but Genos pointed out that professional heroes often collaborate without prior coordination, making this exercise a simulation of real-world scenarios. Iida acknowledged this, realizing that life is a series of random events. He apologized to All Might, who brushed it off and proceeded with the team selections. The teams were formed as follows. Team A, Izuku Midoriya and Ochako Uraraka. Team B, Ice Guy and Mask Guy. Team C, Pervert Kid and Ponytail Girl. Team D, Katsuki Bakugo and Tenya Iida. Team E, Tatsumaki and Fubuki. Team F, Mina Ishido and French Guy. Team G, Blonde Guy and Earjack Girl. Team H, Bird Guy and Frog Girl. Team I, Tail Guy and Invisible Girl. Team J, Black-Haired Guy and Red-Haired Guy. Team K, Muscle Guy and Quiet Guy. Team L, 𝗬𝗧 and Midoriya and Genos. Ochako smiled at Izuku, who looked away, shaking nervously. She expressed excitement about being on the same team, and Izuku thought to himself about making a good impression on her. 𝗬𝗧 smiled, knowing this was a significant moment for his brother. All Might then declared the first teams to fight, pulling out the letters A and D, indicating that Team A would be the heroes and Team D the villains. Everyone else was instructed to head to the monitoring room to watch. 𝗬𝗃 encouraged Izuku, telling him to show Bakugo what he could do. Izuku thanked 𝗬𝗃, and they shared a fist bump before 𝗬𝗃 followed the class to the monitor room, leaving Izuku, Ochako, Bakugo, and Iida with All Might. All Might instructed the villains to set up, reminding them that the heroes would be released in 5 minutes. Bakugo glared at Izuku, his competitive spirit igniting. All Might advised Iida and Bakugo to embrace their villainous roles, emphasizing the importance of thinking like evildoers. Iida acknowledged this, while Bakugo remained impatient, ready for the challenge ahead. Tenya looked at the nuke, tapping it and earning a hollow sound. He turned to Bakugo, who had his back to him, and questioned whether he really thought Deku had a quirk. Tenya appeared confused by Bakugo's intensity. Iida pointed out how Deku had thrown the ball, speculating that his power might hurt his body. Bakugo's anger simmered beneath the surface, his teeth gritting together. Iida noticed Bakugo's particular anger towards Midoriya and wondered why it was so pronounced. Bakugo's thoughts raced, questioning if Deku had been tricking him all these years. He felt a surge of determination to confront that nerd today. Outside the building, Izuku stood next to Ochako, reviewing the blueprints of the building to strategize. She expressed her disbelief at the size of the building and how All Might was just as impressive in person as on television. She felt relieved that All Might wasn't threatening them with punishment like Mr. Aizawa. However, she noticed Izuku sweating and shaking as he studied the plans. Concerned, she pointed out that he was sweating through his costume. Izuku tried to relax, explaining that they were up against Kaken and Iida, and they needed to be on guard. Ochako observed Izuku's nervousness and contrasted it with 𝗬𝗃, who never showed any emotion. She reminded him that Bakugo was the one who always made fun of him. Izuku sighed, recalling moments from his life involving Bakugo. He acknowledged Bakugo's strength, confidence, and ambition, noting that they were all greater than his own. Ochako listened as Izuku spoke, unsure of how to respond. Then, Izuku looked up with determination, stating that he had to do better and refused to lose that day. Ochako's excitement grew as he put his mask back on, and she encouraged him, reminding him they were a team. As All Might's voice boomed from the loudspeakers, announcing the start of the indoor combat training, the class watched the screens in the monitor room. All Might urged the students to pay attention and think about their strategies. 𝗬𝗃 watched Izuku head in with Ochako, his faith unwavering, silently encouraging his brother to show everyone what he was capable of. Inside the building, Izuku and Ochako entered through a window, taking in the tight spaces that posed a disadvantage. Izuku cautioned her about the many blind spots as they moved carefully through the area. He contemplated their strategy, realizing he couldn't risk using one for all without control. They would have to rely on Uraraka's zero gravity and his own wits. He had studied indoor battles and knew he could handle this. Suddenly, Kaken appeared from a corner, launching an explosion at them. Izuku quickly grabbed Uraraka, pulling her out of harm's way, though part of his mask was destroyed in the process. He imagined 𝗬𝗃's reaction if he saw him saving Uraraka, likely ready to tease him. He checked on her, relieved she was fine, and faced Kaken, who taunted him about being afraid to fight. Determined, Izuku stood up, acknowledging that he expected Kaken to come at him first. The class watched the screens, 𝗬𝗃 frowning at Bakugo's aggressive tactics. Grape Boy noted how close Bakugo had come to catching them off guard, while Red Hair Guy criticized Bakugo's sneak attack. All Might defended Bakugo's strategy, explaining that it was a tactic a true villain would use. 𝗬𝗃 expressed his frustration, feeling that Bakugo was letting his anger out on Izuku without restraint. Inside the building, Bakugo charged at Izuku, a cruel smile on his face as he declared he wouldn't hurt him too badly. Just as he swung his arm, Izuku surprised everyone by grabbing Bakugo's arm and executing an overhead swing. Ochako gasped in amazement at Izuku's quick thinking and skill. Bakugo was taken aback, struggling to comprehend how Izuku had managed that move. Izuku stood over Bakugo, fists raised and face determined. He declared that he had studied Bakugo's fighting style for years, analyzing every hero, including him. he revealed that he had learned from the notebook Bakugo had burned. He proclaimed that he was no longer the helpless kid he once was, and from now on, the name Deku would represent a hero. Ochako was taken aback, recalling her earlier words about the name Deku. In the monitor room, 𝗬𝗏 watched with pride at his brother's growth. He couldn't hear the words but felt a swell of admiration for Izuku and gratitude towards Ochako for her support. He silently encouraged his brother, feeling a sense of pride in his progress. Bakugo glared at Izuku, muttering his name with a mix of disbelief and determination. Ever since they were kids, Bakugo believed he could do anything, even confront Izuku, despite the fear evident in his demeanor. Bakugo taunted Izuku, accusing him of trembling in fear while still wanting to fight. This only fueled Bakugo's resentment. Bakugo's earpiece crackled to life with Tenya's voice, demanding a status report. Bakugo, focused on Izuku, dismissed Tenya's concerns, insisting he had more important matters to attend to. In the monitor room, Tenya expressed disbelief at Bakugo's actions, frustrated that his partner was ignoring their mission. The students watched the screens, confused by the silence, while All Might explained that Bakugo was using a radio to communicate with Tenya. He also revealed a roll of capture tape, which, when wrapped around an opponent, would eliminate them from the game. Fubuki noted the 15-minute time limit and the heroes' lack of knowledge about the bomb's location, highlighting the disadvantage they faced. All Might encouraged the class, reminding them that real heroes must outsmart villains daily, regardless of the odds. As Bakugo launched himself at Izuku, the latter prepared to defend himself. Uraraka quickly moved to find the weapon, while Izuku successfully blocked Bakugo's kick. Bakugo, realizing his foot was ensnared by capture tape, felt the pressure of the situation. Izuku recalled his notes on Eraserhead's moves, anticipating Bakugo's next attack. The students in the monitor room expressed their admiration for Izuku's skills, with All Might reflecting on how Izuku had internalized the lessons he learned over the years. 𝗬𝗏 watched intently, his expression neutral but a hint of a smile growing as he cheered for Izuku in his thoughts. As Izuku analyzed Bakugo's shifting tactics, he recognized that his rival was trying to keep him guessing. Retreating to a corner, Izuku devised a plan while Bakugo searched for him, frustration evident in his demeanor. Bakugo's anger boiled over as he accused Izuku and 𝗬𝗏 of tricking him, determined to prove his superiority. In the monitor room, the class observed Bakugo's escalating anger, with some expressing concern over his temperament. All Might contemplated Bakugo's pride and how it could lead to his downfall, while also wondering how 𝗬𝗏 was coping with the tension of the situation. Meanwhile, Izuku caught his breath in a corner, realizing that Bakugo's focus on him meant he had forgotten about Uraraka. He recognized that if they were to face Bakugo and his partner, they would need a solid strategy. With time running out, Izuku decided to trust Uraraka and stay separated for the moment, hoping for the best. She would find the weapon and Iida, and then he would join her for a 2-on-1 fight. That was how they would win. He just needed to capture Kaken down here on his own. He could do it as long as he didn't get too close to his hands. Bakugo shouted for him to stop hiding, and he gasped, realizing how close Kaken was. Bakugo demanded he come out and face him, his anger more intense than ever. He recalled all the times Kaken had bullied him, but 𝗬𝗏 had always been there to encourage him, believing in him. Especially after their deal, 𝗬𝗏 had trained for 3 years to become as strong as he was now, and he knew 𝗬𝗏 believed he would win this. Meanwhile, Bakugo was frustrated, searching everywhere for him. He thought of him as a coward, a little bug that he could easily crush. He remembered how, since they were little, he had always been better than Deku, who had never been able to do anything right. When Bakugo received his quirk, he felt invincible, knowing he was greater than anyone else. Then he learned that Deku was quirkless, just like 𝗬𝗏, and he saw them as worthless bugs. He recalled the day he fell off a log into a stream, and Deku had looked down at him, offering his hand as if he were weak. But Bakugo was not weak, he was far superior, and he would remind Deku of that when he got his hands on him. In another part of the building, Ochako finally found the room with the weapon and hid behind a pillar, observing Iida talking to himself. He seemed distracted, which was good. She needed to inform Deku and stay out of sight until he arrived. Ida was contemplating the villainous side of Bakugo, believing it was necessary for their mission. He declared that he needed to embrace evil to become a hero, turning around dramatically and attempting to look menacing. Achiko couldn't help but stifle a laugh at his seriousness. When he noticed her, he pointed, still in his exaggerated tone, claiming he knew she would come alone since Bakugo had left to confront Midoriya. Ida boasted about how he had prepared for her quirk and had hidden every object in the room, rendering her helpless. He reveled in his villainous role, and Achiko was amused by his antics. Meanwhile, Izuku was in the halls, responding to Achiko's call through his earpiece. She informed him that Ida was aware of her presence and was currently monologuing. This was not good, they had to act quickly. He looked up, realizing she was right above him. Time was running out, and he needed to capture Kaken. Determined, he stood up, ready to face his rival. Kaken approached, his right gauntlet glowing ominously as he smiled. He taunted Izuku, questioning why he wasn't using his quirk. Izuku felt a surge of determination. He was no longer scared. Kaken revealed that his gauntlets were not just for show. They had been storing his nitroglycerin-like sweat for a massive explosion. In the monitor room, All Might sensed the danger and realized Bakugo was going too far. Genos warned him that if the gauntlet detonated at full force, it could cause catastrophic damage and seriously injure Izuku. All Might felt a sense of urgency. Back inside the building, Izuku moved just as Bakugo pulled the pin, the explosion shaking the entire structure and destroying much of the floor. The class gasped at the power of the blast, and All Might checked in on Izuku through the microphone. Izuku, in shock, questioned if such an act was even allowed. Bakugo laughed, relishing the chaos he had caused, and taunted Izuku to use his quirk against him, confident that he would never be defeated. Meanwhile, Ida, still in the monitor room, demanded to know what was happening. Achiko seized the moment to run toward Ida, thinking that if she could claim the weapon, they would win. Ida noticed her approach and prepared to stop her, but Achiko floated over him, determined to reach the weapon. She focused on her goal, knowing that touching the weapon would secure their victory. In one swift motion, everything would come to an end. Ida looked back, surprised to see Ochako floating in the air. He wondered when she had learned to make herself levitate. Ochako pressed her fingertips together, descending toward the weapon with her arms outstretched. She thought to herself that this special move was challenging, but it was worth the effort. Ida quickly activated his quirk, speeding forward to grab the weapon and move it out of her reach. Ochako yelped as she hit the ground, rolling until she collided with the wall, losing her helmet in the process. Ida faced her, returning to his villainous demeanor. He remarked that her attempt was admirable, but her quirk posed no threat if she couldn't make contact with anything. He could easily keep the weapon out of her reach until time ran out. He let out a sinister laugh as Ochako looked at him, realizing that this was going to be more difficult than she had anticipated. In her thoughts, she vowed that it wasn't over and that she wouldn't let Deku down. Meanwhile, Izuku and Bakugo were in a tense standoff. Izuku began to rise, noticing Kaken still grinning like a villain. Bakugo taunted him, questioning why he looked scared. He reminded Izuku that he had dodged the attack and could still fight. Izuku felt his luck diminishing by the minute. The gauntlets Bakugo wore allowed him to use his powers from a distance, making Izuku feel unsafe even when he tried to keep his distance. He decided to contact Uraraka to check on the situation with the weapon. He called out to her, asking for an update. Ochako responded that things were not looking good. Bakugo interrupted, demanding her attention once more. In the monitor room, a red-haired student expressed concern to All Might, worried that Bakugo was acting recklessly and might seriously hurt Izuku. As All Might warned Bakugo, Genos felt a slight relaxation. He thought that only a complete fool would ignore such a warning, and despite Bakugo's behavior, he knew he wasn't a fool. Everyone watched as Bakugo unleashed explosions on Izuku, who was being overwhelmed and slammed. 𝗬𝗏 clenched his fists at his sides, his jaw tightening, yet he remained still. Genos, standing beside him, noticed the tension and turned to 𝗬𝗏, his robotic eyes scanning his face. He asked if 𝗬𝗏 was all right, his voice low and cautious. He understood how much 𝗬𝗏 cared for Izuku and had witnessed the strong bond between the brothers. Despite seeing Izuku in danger, 𝗬𝗏 remained composed, which worried Genos. 𝗬𝗏 exhaled slowly, relaxing his fists but keeping his golden eyes locked on the screen. He assured Genos that he was fine. Genos was taken aback, questioning 𝗬𝗏's calm demeanor given the situation. 𝗬𝗏 shook his head, his voice steady yet firm. He admitted that he was fighting every instinct to intervene, wanting to protect Izuku from Bakugo. He looked down at his hands, flexing them before clenching them again. He explained that if Izuku wanted to be a hero, he needed to fight his own battles, and he had to trust in his brother's abilities. He lifted his gaze back to the screen, his expression unreadable, but a small, proud smile began to form. He expressed his trust in Izuku, stating that he was tough and would succeed. The others around them were stunned by the unwavering faith 𝗬𝗏 had in Izuku, even when the odds seemed against him. As Bakugo continued his assault, 𝗬𝗏's smile only grew. Genos observed his emissary for a moment before nodding in agreement, deciding to trust in Midoriya as well. The class continued watching, but now they were not just spectators of Izuku's fight. They were witnesses to 𝗬𝗏's steadfast belief in his little brother, which was just as powerful as the battle unfolding before them. Inside building, Izuku felt an overwhelming pain like never before. Kaken was relentless, and All Might had previously warned him not to unleash the stored explosions in his gauntlets again. The relentless assault left Izuku no time to strategize, and he hoped 𝗬𝗏𝗧 had reached the pillar by the window. Realizing he had no other choice, he ran to create distance between himself and Kaken, stopping near a window. Bakugo questioned why Izuku wasn't using his quirk against him, challenging him to stop him without it. Izuku insisted that it wasn't about that. Kaken's smile remained, but Izuku could sense his fury and frustration. Bakugo accused Izuku of hiding his true power for years, questioning if he and his brother thought they were better than him now that 𝗬𝗏 was strong. Izuku felt a surge of frustration, thinking about how Kaken was being unreasonable. He faced Bakugo with tears in his eyes, expressing that he wanted to beat him because he admired his strength. Bakugo dismissed him as an idiot and challenged him to come at him. Izuku raised his right arm, feeling the power of one for all coursing through it. He prepared to unleash his move, calling out for it to work. As the two charged at each other, All Might's voice echoed through the speakers, urging them to stop. Izuku called out to 𝗬𝗏𝗧, signaling her to act. He knew he couldn't defeat Kaken in a one-on-one fight, but he was determined to win. With all his strength, he shouted his move, unleashing a powerful punch. The entire building shook as the shockwave from Izuku's punch created a massive hole between Ochako and Iida, giving her the opportunity she needed. She used her quirk to lighten the pillar she was holding, allowing her to swing it. Iida questioned what was happening as Ochako declared it was her moment. She swung the pillar, sending debris flying toward Iida, executing her improvised special move. As Iida raised a hand in protest, she floated over the hole and leaped toward the weapon, successfully grabbing it. She celebrated their victory, though she felt a wave of nausea wash over her. Back with Izuku and Bakugo, Bakugo's expression shifted to one of shock as he witnessed the power Izuku had unleashed. Izuku's right arm was clearly injured, and he raised his left arm to shield himself from Bakugo's explosion. Bakugo realized that Izuku had been playing him all along, feeling betrayed. Izuku weakly explained that he hadn't intended to use that power, revealing that he couldn't control it yet. He admitted that this was the only way he could think of to win. As he collapsed to the floor, losing consciousness, Bakugo fell to his knees in disbelief. In the monitor room, the class was in shock at the scene they had just witnessed. 𝗬𝗏's smile widened, especially as All Might began to speak. 𝗬𝗏 raised a fist in the air, a smile on his face as he celebrated. He cheered for his little brother, Izuku, much to the shock of their classmates, who could hardly believe their eyes. All Might addressed the class, announcing that he would check on the teams. 𝗬𝗏 turned to All Might and asked if he could accompany him. All Might agreed. Inside building, two robots carried Izuku on a stretcher, transporting him away. One of the robots announced their destination as the nurse's office. As All Might approached Bakugo, 𝗬/N reached the stretcher, stopping the robots to look down at Izuku. He greeted his little brother, who weakly opened his eyes and smiled. 𝗬/N expressed his pride in Izuku's achievement, and Izuku smiled back before closing his eyes again. 𝗬/N then noticed Bakugo, who was still seething after the match. He approached Bakugo, crossing his arms as he looked down at the angry boy. Although 𝗬/N's expression remained mostly unchanged, there was a sharpness in his tone as he spoke. He reminded Bakugo of the consequences of his actions and pointed out that watching him lose to Izuku was more satisfying than any physical confrontation could have been. 𝗬/N emphasized that Izuku had always been better than Bakugo, needing only the right motivation to prove it. As he turned to leave, he glanced back, noting that everyone, including Bakugo, now recognized the truth. With that, he walked away, leaving Bakugo alone with his frustration. Next time on the One Punch Student of 𝗬𝗂𝗍. The scene shifted dramatically to 𝗬/N standing in his bright yellow hero costume, cape fluttering slightly as he stared at the building where Tatsumaki and 𝗵𝗃𝗍 had just disappeared. 𝗵𝗃𝗍 warned him that they would not go easy on him just because they were classmates, while Tatsumaki challenged him to last more than a second before floating into the building. In the monitor room, All Might and the rest of Class 1A watched intently. All Might declared that this match would be a true test of teamwork and power, and Mina expressed her excitement to see how it would unfold. Outside the building, Genos faced his 𝗵𝗃𝗁, suggesting they plan carefully against their 𝗕𝗏𝗄 opponents. 𝗬/N, confused, asked what an 𝗕𝗏𝗄 was. In the weapon room, Tatsumaki used her powers to send Genos crashing into a wall and then attempted to do the same to 𝗬/N, who was about to grab a weapon. She declared that he wouldn't get away with it. In the monitor room, the class gasped at the unfolding events. The class stood before All Might, who continued the lesson while Iida, Bakugo, and Ochako stood side by side. All Might announced that, despite the results, the MVP of the exercise was young Iida. Iida looked surprised, while the frog girl questioned why it wasn't one of the heroes, as they were the winners. All Might acknowledged her valid question and asked the class for their thoughts. Both Genos and the ponytail girl raised their hands, eager to explain. Genos graciously allowed the ponytail girl to speak first. She surprised everyone, including All Might and 𝗬/N, with her analysis. She explained that Iida had embraced the challenge and adapted to his role, while Bakugo's judgment was clouded by his grudge against Midoriya. She pointed out that Bakugo's large-scale attack indoors was reckless, and Midoriya's plan had left him vulnerable. Ochako, feeling the weight of her own mistakes, kept her head down as the ponytail girl continued, noting that Iida had maintained focus on protecting the dummy weapon, even if he ultimately failed. The class listened in silence, impressed by her insights. 𝗬/N whistled in admiration, acknowledging her intelligence. The ponytail girl blushed and thanked him. All Might, recognizing her keen observations, agreed with her points but noted that Iida could have relaxed a bit during the exercise. The ponytail girl confidently stated that one must start with the basics and dedicate themselves to learning to become a top hero. All Might concluded the discussion, urging the class to reflect on what they had learned as they prepared for the next match. The students responded affirmatively. As the matches continued, 𝗬/N observed the impressive quirks of his classmates. One student, whose costume resembled ice, had frozen the entire building, hindering his opponents. Another could harden his body like rock, while the ponytail girl demonstrated her ability to create objects from her body. 𝗬/N noted the inappropriate gaze of a classmate with grape-colored hair directed at the ponytail girl, and he also saw a bird-headed student accompanied by a girl who displayed frog-like abilities. He found the abilities fascinating but couldn't help but worry about Izuku, hoping he was doing better. Meanwhile, he noticed Bakugo looking somewhat downcast, though he couldn't quite understand why. Oh well, like I'd ever care about him. After a while, it finally came down to 𝗬/N and Genos facing the short green-haired girl and the taller girl, who appeared to be her sister. All Might announced the final match, declaring Team L as the heroes and Team E as the villains. The location changed to the last building on Ground Beta. 𝗬/𝗵 stood next to 𝗓𝗄s as All Might handed them the building blueprints and earpieces for communication. All Might reminded the four of them to remember everything they had seen, to be mindful of the time, and to stick to their roles as heroes or villains. He turned to the girls, and for once, the short girl, 𝗬𝗵𝗲, seemed to show some respect. All Might instructed 𝗬𝗵𝗲 and 𝗵𝗃𝗲 that they had 5 minutes to prepare. Both girls nodded, and 𝗬𝗵𝗲 began to float, surrounded by a green glow. As they left, 𝗬/𝗵 started to study the blueprints, trying to memorize them. He asked 𝗓𝗄s for his thoughts. 𝗓𝗄s shared that their opponents were 𝗬𝗪s, which puzzled 𝗬/𝗵. 𝗓𝗄s explained that an 𝗬𝗪 is someone whose quirk is entirely psychic-based, manipulating forces unseen to the ordinary eye. Their powers include telekinesis, telepathy, precognition, psychometric reading, barrier generation, and psycho-enhancement. 𝗓𝗄s warned that 𝗬𝗪s are extremely rare and highly dangerous, and the Hero Association carefully monitors them to protect their identities and abilities. 𝗬/𝗵 found this information intriguing and realized that they were strong and had many tricks up their sleeves. He understood that underestimating them would be a mistake. Determined to apply what he had learned from All Might, 𝗬/𝗵 knew they had to treat the exercise seriously. He couldn't just break through walls recklessly, as it could jeopardize the weapon they were supposed to retrieve. 𝗓𝗄s could scan the building for the weapon, but 𝗬/𝗵 wondered if there was a way to stun their opponents. 𝗓𝗄s confirmed that he could use his lightning eye, which would create a bright flash of light to temporarily blind the enemies, providing an opportunity to strike. 𝗬/𝗵 felt this could be useful and shared his idea with 𝗓𝗄s. Meanwhile, in the room with the weapon on the top floor, 𝗬𝗵𝗲 finished sealing the doors, feeling satisfied as she and 𝗵𝗃𝗲 stood by the fake weapon. 𝗬𝗵𝗲 expressed confidence that they wouldn't let 𝗬/𝗵 and 𝗓𝗄s win easily, believing they could hold them in place until time ran out. 𝗵𝗃𝗲, though unsure, agreed that it was a good plan. 𝗬𝗵𝗲 smirked, feeling assured of their victory. All Might signaled the start of the match. Moments later, 𝗬/𝗵 burst through the wall, sliding to a stop and facing the sisters. He called for 𝗓𝗄s to act. 𝗓𝗄s unleashed his lightning eye, causing a bright flash that forced both sisters to cover their eyes. 𝗬𝗵𝗲 yelled in surprise, while 𝗵𝗃𝗲 struggled to see. 𝗬/𝗵 praised 𝗓𝗄s for his successful distraction. As 𝗬/𝗵 and 𝗓𝗄s rushed toward the weapon, 𝗬𝗵𝗲 quickly recovered and attempted to stop them by using her power to send 𝗓𝗄s crashing against the wall. 𝗬/𝗵 glanced back at his friend, who assured him he was fine and urged 𝗬/𝗵 to continue. 𝗬/𝗵 then approached the weapon, but 𝗬𝗵𝗲 raised her hand to block him. As 𝗬/𝗵 neared the weapon, he was suddenly enveloped in the green aura, but to 𝗬𝗵𝗲's shock, he remained completely unaffected. Confused, 𝗬/𝗵 remarked that the 𝗬𝗪 power felt a bit tingly. 𝗵𝗃𝗲, watching in disbelief, nervously informed her sister that 𝗬/𝗵 wasn't even flinching. In the monitor room, the class was stunned by the display. All Might, equally amazed, chuckled at the unexpected turn of events, realizing that 𝗬/𝗵 was full of surprises. Back in the room with the weapon, 𝗬𝗵𝗲 seethed in frustration, unable to comprehend how 𝗬/𝗵 had resisted her quirk. "He's quirkless." 𝗬/𝗵 shrugged as he placed a hand on the weapon, lifting it. He felt a sense of accomplishment as he declared that he had it. All Might announced that the hero team had won, causing 𝗬𝗵𝗲 to twitch in outrage, unable to believe she had lost so easily. 𝗬/𝗵 lowered the fake weapon, scratching the back of his neck, surprised at how well it had gone. 𝗬𝗵𝗲, glaring at him as she floated to his eye level, demanded to know how he had managed to resist her powers. 𝗬/𝗵 scratched his chin, pondering the question before simply shrugging, admitting he had no idea. 𝗬𝗵𝗲 growled, warning him that he was lucky it was just an exercise, or she would have sent him flying from the building. 𝗬/𝗵 blinked, responding with a light-hearted comment that earned a snort of laughter from 𝗵𝗃𝗲, who was trying hard to contain her amusement. 𝗬𝗵𝗲, practically shaking with fury, corrected him on her name, spelling it out in frustration. 𝗬/𝗵, unfazed, asked if he could call her Tats, which only fueled her anger further. As she turned to leave, muttering angrily, 𝗵𝗃𝗲, still struggling not to laugh. 𝗬/N remarked to 𝗕𝗏𝗁, who was still stuck to the wall, that he never expected someone to have a temper like 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗁. 𝗬/N hurried to his friend, realizing he needed to help him. The sound of metal tearing filled the air as he accidentally removed 𝗕𝗏𝗁's arm. 𝗬/N quickly asked All Might if UA had a cyborg repair room, feeling guilty for the mishap. After a change of location and a time skip, the class gathered at the ground beta entrance, where All Might stood with his hands on his hips, praising their performance. He noted that there were no major injuries, except for Midoriya and 𝗕𝗏𝗁, who was still holding his arm. 𝗬/N apologized to 𝗕𝗏𝗁, who reassured him that it could be fixed. All Might encouraged the class, commending their first day of training. The students smiled at the praise from the symbol of peace. One of the students mentioned how nice it was to hear encouraging words after a tough homeroom class, prompting All Might to express his happiness in bringing positivity to UA. He then announced he would check on Midoriya's progress. 𝗬/N stepped up to All Might, asking if he could tag along. All Might welcomed him, noting how inspiring their relationship was. They both took off in a blur, leaving the class in awe of 𝗬/N's speed as he kept pace with All Might. As they ran through UA, All Might reflected on how well the class had performed, learning quickly from their mistakes. He noted that Bakugo's pride might be justified, but UA would challenge it. He felt it was his duty to guide him, though he had to focus on his own limitations at that moment. Coming to a stop, he transformed back to his original form, relieved that no students had seen him. 𝗬/N, concerned, asked if he was okay, and All Might assured him he was fine. All Might couldn't shake the question of how someone like Tatsumaki could not affect 𝗬/N, realizing that a quirkless 16-year-old was raising many questions among them. In the UA support department workshop, 𝗕𝗏𝗁 entered, still holding his torn arm. He scanned the room filled with students working on technology for heroes. 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗀𝗧, the teacher of the support class, greeted him. 𝗕𝗏𝗁 acknowledged him, and 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗀𝗧 quickly realized that 𝗕𝗏𝗁 was familiar with him. Noticing 𝗕𝗏𝗁's arm, 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗀𝗧 offered to help him find a student who could repair it. 𝗕𝗏𝗁 followed 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗀𝗧 to a table where a female student was working. 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗀𝗧 introduced 𝗕𝗏𝗁 to myheroacademia, who eagerly welcomed him to the shop. She was fascinated by his advanced technology and asked about his modifications. When 𝗕𝗏𝗁 mentioned Dr. 𝗂𝗵𝗵𝗏, excitement exploded as she recognized the legendary scientist. She bombarded 𝗕𝗏𝗁 with questions about his modifications, practically frothing with enthusiasm. 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗀𝗧, deadpan, apologized to 𝗕𝗏𝗁, explaining that this was her usual reaction when meeting someone with impressive tech. As May continued her excited chatter, 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗀𝗧 carried her away, leaving 𝗕𝗏𝗁 to ponder the whirlwind of energy that was May. 𝗂𝗵𝗏 loved him, and if he ever needed a prototype tester, she would jump into a black hole for him. 𝗕𝗏𝗁 was left looking confused, wondering what had just happened. In the nurse's office, Recovery Girl remarked on how it was only the second day of school and already Izuku was a regular patient. When 𝗕𝗏𝗁 described Recovery Girl as a short old lady who resembled a model grandma, she hadn't expected it to be so accurate. Sitting next to Izuku's bed, 𝗬/N noticed Recovery Girl giving All Might an angry look. She expressed her frustration, pointing out that two grown men had watched a boy completely injure himself to prove a point. 𝗬/N flinched, recognizing the same look his mother gave him when he was in trouble. Feeling nervous, 𝗬/N tried to explain that he just wanted Izuku to show everyone what he could do, believing he needed this moment. Recovery Girl's glare intensified, making him feel scared, as she reminded him that apologizing wouldn't help Izuku, who was too exhausted from his classes for her quirk to be effective. She noted that while she had done some first aid, they would need to wait for Izuku's body to heal overnight. Turning to All Might, who was also concerned for Izuku, Recovery Girl urged him not to spoil the boy. All Might acknowledged that he was trying not to play favorites but wanted to consider Izuku's feelings, believing he needed to see that he was capable of winning the exercise. 𝗬/N agreed, confident that Izuku was tough and would soon be back on his feet. All Might then reminded Recovery Girl to keep quiet about One for All, as it was a secret known only to a select few, including her, the principal, and a close friend of his. 𝗬𝗃 was surprised to learn that she was aware of it too. Recovery Girl, no longer angry, pointed out that All Might was the #1 hero in the world and questioned whether it truly mattered if he was born with his quirk. She emphasized the importance of him being a good guide. Then, she turned to 𝗬𝗃, poking him lightly with her cane, reminding him to ensure Izuku could prove himself without needing extensive bandages. As Recovery Girl returned to checking Izuku's vitals, she expressed her concern about having a heart attack before the semester ended. 𝗬𝗃 whispered to All Might, acknowledging how terrifying Recovery Girl was, to which All Might nodded in agreement. Time passed, and 𝗬𝗃 and Izuku walked through the halls back to Class 1A, with Izuku looking a bit worried and his right arm in a sling. He lamented missing his afternoon classes, fearing Mr. Aizawa's wrath. 𝗬𝗃 admitted to skipping classes to stay with him, noting that Recovery Girl had insisted on it. Upon entering the classroom, they were greeted by their classmates, including Genos, who had his arm reattached. Red-haired 𝗬𝗫𝗁 welcomed them back, expressing excitement about Izuku's performance in the match. Others chimed in, praising Izuku for holding his own against Bakugo and complimenting his dodging skills. Mina Ishido approached 𝗬𝗃, calling him cool and cute for his performance. As the introductions continued, 𝗬𝗃 struggled to remember all the names, feeling overwhelmed. Genos approached his emcir and assured him that he had compiled a detailed student database, including names, quirks, seating positions, dietary restrictions, and notable fighting styles. 𝗬𝗃 felt a bead of sweat form on his forehead as he looked at Genos with a bewildered expression. He realized he had inadvertently created a flashcard machine. Tsu smiled gently at the elder Midoriya, assuring him that he would soon get used to their group. Kirishima declared that if 𝗬𝗃 remembered him as the manly one he wouldn't complain, and 𝗬𝗃 responded with a thumbs up, affirming his new nickname. Fubuki turned to Tatsumaki, who was observing with her arms crossed. Fubuki noted that their new teammate was strong but not the brightest. Tatsumaki expressed her suspicion that he would start calling her Tats from now on. The bird guy perched on the desk, arms crossed, found the noise around him bothersome. Iida rushed over, gesturing emphatically as he reprimanded Tokoyami for using the desk as a chair. The earjack girl suggested that Iida needed to relax, while the tail guy pointed out the tension he was carrying. Iida, visibly shaken, declared that no one understood his mission to uphold respect for the desks that had once been used by great upperclassmen. The bird guy reiterated his annoyance at the noise. Izuku and 𝗬𝗃 exchanged glances, noting Iida's intense demeanor. Just then, a blonde guy entered the classroom with Achiko beside him. He casually asked if anyone wanted to grab a bite, but Achiko quickly turned her attention to Izuku, leaving the blonde guy disappointed. Izuku blushed slightly as Achiko inquired why she hadn't healed his injuries. He explained that it was related to his stamina usage. As Izuku conversed with Achiko, 𝗬𝗃 stood next to Genos, observing his little brother with a sense of pride. Genos remarked that despite Midoriya's injuries, the day had been a success. Tatsumaki approached them, floating with her arms crossed, expressing her frustration about being placed in an elite unit called Team Omega. Genos rationalized that their combined power made them the strongest team of their generation. Tatsumaki grumbled about having to deal with them on more missions, casting a glare at 𝗬𝗃, her cheeks slightly flushed. 𝗬𝗃 remained unfazed, casually responding to her. Tatsumaki insisted he not call her that, to which 𝗬𝗃 playfully replied that they were on nickname terms now. Genos stifled a laugh, while Fubuki covered her mouth, smiling at the exchange. 𝗬𝗃 then noticed Izuku was missing and turned to Achiko, who stood outside with Tsu and Mina, looking concerned. Achiko informed him that Izuku was talking to Bakugo, who seemed upset but not fully angry. 𝗬𝗃 looked down to see Bakugo on the verge of tears as he shouted at Izuku. He sensed that things were escalating and knew that Bakugo was reaching his limit. Meanwhile, Izuku was determined to keep up with Bakugo and finally surpass him. However, they were unaware of the looming danger. All Might had warned them about cunning villains and monsters, and soon they would experience the reality of that threat firsthand. In an unknown bar, a conversation unfolded about the potential fate of the symbol of peace, speculating what would happen if he were to be killed by villains. In a different location, an individual wearing glasses scrutinized a hologram screen, replaying footage of a green-haired teenager defeating Mosquito Girl with a single blow. This man was frustrated by his inability to uncover the secrets of this boy, who had also defeated a dragon-level monster nearly a year prior. He was determined to capture him and believed that with his power, the House of Evolution could change the world for the better.